Did I do the intro? I can't remember if I did the intro or not. Hi, I'm Kaylee J, and let's talk about Twilight. From the top, take it once more. We're going to do a little sync of the audio. We're synced, hopefully. We'll find out together. So the beginning of this book is actually really well done. We have been with these characters through a lot. And now is the time when Edward and Bella are finally getting married. And, you know, it's really well done. Stephanie does a good job, okay? This is our final moment with every single character who's ever been in the books, practically. We are thrown immediately into a wedding, okay? It's wedding time. We're in the wedding. She is walking down the aisle, where she does get that moment from the movie, which I know is, like, popular, where she turns to Charlie. She's like, "Don't let me fall, Dad." And he's like, "Nah, I won't." He also offers her multiple outs, by the way, which is, like, a really good thing to have in your life, generally, is somebody who, in that situation of a wedding, is willing to go up to you and be like, "Hey, if we need to get out of Dodge right now, we can go. I'll take you. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." It's a very important thing to have in your life as a person. At first, it's like, oh, this is cute. You know, they're getting married. How adorable. And then it takes this kind of turn within that where we become uniquely aware of the fact that this is the last time any of these people are going to see Bella, because she's going to fake her own death. So it takes on a different tone after that. It's actually kind of difficult to read because she's like telling her parents that she loves them like forever and always, and that she always loved them, and don't ever forget it, please. You know, that it makes you a little sad when you're reading it. Suddenly I'm not as happy that Edward and Bella are getting married. I'm a little sad. She also is like, oh, it's a shame that Jacob isn't there. But then Jacob is there and they have a cute moment, and then he immediately ruins it because he finds out that Bella is not planning on being turned into a vampire that very night. She's gonna wait a little bit for reasons that'll get me demonetized on YouTube. So he's upset about that, and he transforms into a little wolfy man and runs away. They get married, and then it's time for the honeymoon, where we find out that Carlisle has a whole fucking island. A whole island for Esme. It's named Island Esme. In the book I wrote, if you can see that, a whole ass island. I was shocked by this. And that's where they're gonna have their honeymoon, which I have some thoughts about. Carlisle, why not give me an island? That seems kind of fucked up. There are people starving. Carlisle, you're not gonna... No, go ahead, buy an island. No, you're right. Buy the island. It's fine. It's fine. It's not like there are other people who could use that money or anything. It's fine. So this is where the honeymoon happens. And I would like to remind people that this is a good Christian household, okay? Also, I don't want to get demonetized on YouTube. Mostly. I'm not even monetized on YouTube yet, but I don't want to get demonetized before I get monetized, you know what I'm saying? So we're gonna be talking around these events, which sometimes I can find really annoying. So I'm sorry for everybody that I have to talk around these events and weird terminologies and such. Anyways, they do the devil's tango. After they do things that you would do on a honeymoon, Bella wakes up. You know, she's all refreshed. She's having the time of her life. Because you have to remember, this has been Bella's goal since book 1, okay? Plus the vampire part, but you know what? She's willing to wait for that. Like, it doesn't matter. She has achieved her goal, essentially, as a character. And so she wakes up, she's pretty happy. She's married. She's on an island. What is there to be sad about, right? But she wakes up, and Edward is in the corner. He's being all sad and dramatic. She's confused. They are married on an island. What is there to be sad about, Edward? She's like, why are you, what? No, this is my time. This is my time. What is wrong? And he's all dramatic. Bella, I am so incredibly sorry for the sins I've committed against you. You must hate me, see me only as a monster. I'm okay with that. We can part peacefully, if we could just part peacefully, that would be really great. She's like, what the fuck are you talking about? What is wrong with you? I have achieved everything I've ever wanted in life. Please, don't pretend, for my sake, that you don't know what I'm talking about. If you don't explain yourself, I swear to God, I'll kill you. I'll do it right now. I don't care. I'll be a widow. I don't... Look at yourself. You're bruised. What? She's got bruises from the night previously. And a couple of things to note. First of all, girl, you married him. You're not allowed to act surprised that he's being dramatic, okay? You knew this before you married him. You've been married to him for approximately 1 day. I get it. But you knew this before you went into it. I don't want to hear any complaints from her, first of all. Second of all, she is bruised, but Bella says she bruises easily multiple times in the, first couple of books. We know this about her. And also, it's not that difficult to bruise somebody. So, Edward is being dramatic here. I just want to make that clear. My favorite part of this is how absolutely funny this conversation is because Bella is like, no. She says, you are killing my buzz, Edward. That is so funny. The funniest way to describe that, actually. You're killing my buzz, Edward, frankly. All right? Fuck off. After this, he no longer wants to participate in honeymoon activities with her. And instead, he spends his time, like, cooking meals for her and taking her hiking and stuff, so she's too tired to ask for things. Again, I have to talk around all of this. That's all going on. And then basically, she has a nightmare, okay? This is, like, weird and consent issue problems and coerced and stuff. I don't like this part. She wakes up from the nightmare and Edward's like, oh my god, Bella, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like kind of freaking out still. And then she's like, I just need you to be with me right now. That would make me feel better. And he's like, no. And then she freaks out even more. And then they do the devil's tango again. That's like weird coercion, isn't that? I don't know. Because Bella is going through a lot at the moment. Like, she is genuinely out of it. But still weird. I don't know why it's in there. Anyways, now here's an important thing to note, actually, because I feel like I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know we all know the memes about the movies, right? It's important to note that they've been on this honeymoon for like a minute, okay? Like, it hasn't been like a day, okay? They had their first night together, and then they were there for a long time before this second night happens. Like, it's been like a week or two, I believe, between these two events. Bella and Edward are now enjoying themselves much more freely. He stops freaking out about nonsense, which, thank God, I guess. I don't know. She's still married to him. She's gonna have to deal with this for the rest of her life, so... I'm not gonna judge, I guess. Bella gets sick. She's like cooking something. I think it's chicken. She's cooking like fried chicken. And she's like, she eats some of it because she's really hungry. But then like halfway through, she's like, no, this tastes weird. I don't know. And she goes to like dig through it. And she's like, is it undercooked? No, it's white all the way through. I cooked it all the way. That's so weird. And then the next day, she throws up. She gets sick. Stephanie is light on these details. She always is. I've noticed in New Moon, she was really light on the details when Bella was sick, which is something I appreciate personally. That sounds like a diss when I'm like, yeah, she wasn't very descriptive. But like, it's not a diss. Thank God she wasn't. Edward runs over and he's like, oh my god, are you okay? What's going on? And she's like, it's just food poisoning. I think it was the chicken. I knew it tasted weird. And then she's like, don't worry about it. She's like, no, it's just food poisoning. And then she gets sick again, and now he's really concerned. He's like, I think we should go see a doctor. And she's like, no, I don't like needles. We're not going to a doctor. I'm fine. It's called walking pneumonia for a reason. She's like, maybe there's something in my bag. Maybe I've got like Pepto-Bismol or something. Like, I'm fine. I don't want to go to a doctor. Let me go get some over-the-counter drugs that I probably packed. Except she didn't pack. Alice packed for her. So she's like digging through, trying to see what she can find when she pulls out this box. Now, when I was reading this, I wrote that I thought it was a pregnancy test. I thought Alice packed her a pregnancy test. Which confused me for a minute, but no, it's tampons. She finds a box of tampons. She's like staring at it. She starts doing math in her head. She starts counting. She goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Nope, 1. She's counting. Edward comes in. She's like, Edward, how long have we been here? 17 days since the wedding. Why are you? What is it? She's staring at it. She shows him the box like this. She's still counting. She's like, 1, 2, 3. No, 1, 2. And then he says, what? Are you trying to pass this illness off as PMS? First of all, Edward, nausea is a symptom of PMS. First of all. Second of all, she's like, no, it's full. Look at the box. I didn't open that shit. I'm trying to tell you that my period is late. I should have had it already and I haven't. Now, she says her period is 5 days late. And when I first read that, I was like, oh, is she like very regular? Like, that's a normal amount. That's not that abnormal to be that many days off of your period, depending on like what type of cycle you have. She then goes on to explain that she has never missed 1 day of her period. It's super duper regular. It's super consistent, which like, God, I wish. Good for you, Bella. I'm jealous of you. Could not be me. So he's all surprised by this. He shouldn't be. Bullshit that Edward doesn't know when she gets her periods. I'll say it. Nobody else gonna say it. I'll say it. He knows when that happens. And then she's like, it doesn't make any sense that I'm experiencing all of these symptoms, the sleeping, the crying, the eating, the nausea, at 5 days pregnant. No. Your period is 5 days late. You're not 5 days pregnant, Bella. You're 2 weeks pregnant. For anybody who's confused about why I'm saying it like that, and why I'm confused, is because you don't get pregnant the day your period is late, or the day your period is supposed to start. You get pregnant upon conception, upon act of conceiving, right? If the wedding was 17 days ago, and that first night they had intercourse, she very well could have gotten pregnant from that very first time, and then it's been 2 weeks. She's 2 weeks pregnant. She's experiencing the symptoms that you have at 2 weeks pregnant. This is all very normal. Nobody ever mentions this again, which leads me to believe that Stephanie, for some reason, thought she was 5 days pregnant. Stephanie has children. That's not how pregnancy works. Girl, huh? So no, she's not 5 days pregnant. She's 2 weeks pregnant, and the symptoms she's experiencing are very normal for 2 weeks pregnant. She's actually exactly on track. So she's just wrong about that, and it is never corrected. In fact, if you are aware of what happens, the rest of the pregnancy happens fairly quickly. So I think Stephanie genuinely thought she was 5 days pregnant. I don't know. This confuses me so much because this is just not how women's health works, and everybody should know this, considering, access to abortion is at an all-time low. So you should probably know how pregnancy works. This is when something terrifying happens. She is looking at herself in the mirror and feeling her little tum-tum and noticing that there is like a little bulge there that wasn't there before. Apparently she's incredibly flat-stomached. I don't know, whatever. And then she says, everything I saw in the mirror looked completely different, though nothing was actually different. What happened to change everything was this soft little nudge bumped my hand from inside my body. I'm gonna scream really quick. People are good. I live in a house full of people. No, that's not okay. That isn't, no. I think we should kill it. I think whatever's in her is wrong and bad and we should kill it. I told my mom that and she's like, you have no maternal instincts. Anyways, I think this really freaked me out because genuinely there should be no movement at 2 weeks pregnant. And I know the rest of this happens very fast, but she is like completely flat stomached. Okay, that's like an embryo in that. Like it's not even, it's the size, it's like this big in there. If there is something in there and it nudged you. Okay, and then she talks about it again. This is also horrifying still. It's still horrifying. She says, this is going to sound crazy. Look, I know it's too early for any of this. Well, it's not, you're 2 weeks pregnant. Maybe I am crazy, but I'm having bizarre dreams and eating all the time and crying and throwing up, and those are all normal symptoms at 2 weeks pregnant. And I swear something moved inside me just now. Ew, 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 ew. So Edward calls Carlisle pretty much immediately and is like, panic. He's panicking. He calls Carlisle and Edward is like, we need to go home now. Carlisle is like, we need to go home now. Edward is like, we're gonna be home now, basically. And the entire time this is going on, she's still feeling some nudge inside of her, which is really weird and creepy. It's creepy every time. I don't care if I have no maternal instincts. That is weird and creepy. That is a demon baby. Anyways, basically, one of the women, I believe one of the cleaners, is staring at Bella and she's like, does she say Diablo baby or something stupid? Oh yeah, she says morte. I don't know why this random woman knows about the supernatural. That's a racist character trope, by the way, in case you were curious. This freaks Edward out a lot, by the way. Bella, not freaked out. She's like, yeah, but it's nudging me. Means it's good. And this is when she realizes that Edward is gonna get rid of it. Edward is planning on fixing this situation. And so is Carlisle. That is their plan, to get her home and get rid of it, which is the good plan. I think she should have gone with it, but she doesn't want to, right to choose, I guess. You can choose wrong. Anyways, so she gets him away from her. And she's like, I need you to go pack food or something. And so she picks up the phone. She flips it open. And she's scrolling through the numbers. And we're like, who is she gonna call right now? What is going on? And this is the quote. I found the number I wanted. One I had never called before in my life. I pressed the send button and crossed my fingers. Hello? The voice like golden wind chimes answered. Rosalie? I whispered. It's Bella. Please. You have to help me. So she calls Rosalie. Basically, we're figuring out right now that Bella wants this baby. And she's gonna have this baby. And that's where that leaves off. And then the book switches. We are no longer on book 1. We are on book 2. So in all the ways you're supposed to read this, essentially read this as a separate book. And it's Jacob's point of view. If you can't see what that little text right beside it says, I wrote this bitch. It was funny at the time. And we will talk more about that in a little bit. Syncing audio. Audio is now synced, hopefully. All right, let's begin on our summary of the second part of this book. I split this book into 4 parts. Stephanie split it into 3. I'll go into that later. Let's begin. As I mentioned last time, this is the first point of view switch, POV switch, that we've ever gotten in Twilight. Before, it was always Bella's POV, no matter what, right? We were always in Bella's head. Bella is telling the story. Now it's Jacob, which seems like a really odd choice to be making on the last book of the series. I have a theory as to why this is. I think there is a draft somewhere in this world of Bella's point of view of Breaking Dawn. And in it, Stephanie goes into immense detail about the demon pregnancy. And she was writing it and she stopped and said, this is pro-abortion. I'm gonna get excommunicated from the church. I cannot publish this. And so then she had to switch to Jacob's point of view. Do you think that happened? Because I do. Don't be upset about my funny jokes, okay? We get Jacob's point of view of this because I imagine hearing it from Bella's point of view, which would have just been too uncomfortable for the readers, especially because most of them would have been teenage girls. So we get Jacob's point of view of the whole situation, of the majority of her pregnancy, her entire pregnancy, actually. Which, again, weird choice because I don't fucking like Jacob. Stephanie doesn't like Jacob. Why are we talking about Jacob? Like I said in a previous video, I think it was New Moon, I really harped on this, that I was like, if you like Jacob, that's fine. Especially if you like him because, like, if you just disregard all of the bad writing Stephanie does about him because she hates him, then, like, that's fine. And that's my biggest problem, is that his character is so all over the place because Stephanie doesn't like him. So sometimes he's very sweet to Bella. He's a very good friend, and, you know, he's just trying his best. He has, like, pretty solid morals. Otherwise, he's just kind of like a normal teenage boy who messes up, but it's fine. And then on the other end of the spectrum, he assaults Bella multiple times. He's a giant sexist. What do you want from me, right? Like, how am I supposed to enjoy this character if you're writing him completely backwards with multiple, like, it's too disconnected. But saying all of that, we're gonna go ahead and go through Jacob's point of view for this, which was interesting because we got to get a closer look at the werewolf dynamics, the pack dynamics. We've only ever heard of that from Bella's point of view. So we start off with that, and we kind of get an idea of this whole, like, we can hear everything, everybody's thoughts is everybody's, except it's kind of, like, a little lame by the time we get to it. I think ultimately it was really hyped up, and it would have been difficult to write it like that, because we know that they don't share thoughts in non-werewolf form. So in non-wolfy form, they don't share thoughts. So already we kind of have this difficulty when you're writing that of how is information actually shared, and the way it ends up being is kind of in a similar way that Edward's mind reading works, which is like the thoughts somebody thinks are read, not necessarily everything. Does that make sense? So we end up with that first little conundrum, right? We also get an update on the imprinting situation of the other members of the pack. Now, I've already mentioned how much I hate imprinting, and we all know where this is going. We all know why this is getting brought up again. We all know why it was brought up earlier. We know. Doesn't make it easier to read. Obviously, one of the other members of the pack is imprinted on another baby. That's just something they do, I guess. And it's described as being a much abused nanny. I don't like this. I do not like this. She can't make me like this. We're given the pack dynamics, right? And we've already heard a little bit about how Jacob feels about the pack from before he was even in it. He was really scared of it at the time because they seemed to have formed like this group and they were always listening to Sam, and it felt like a cult almost. And when we're hearing it here, we still see those same fears from Jacob. He doesn't like that he has to listen to Sam, that there's no choice in the matter because he's the alpha of the pack and they can't physically disobey him. Now you'll notice there's a lot of stuff in the werewolf lore that has a lot of focus on getting rid of free will. I don't know why that's a theme. I don't like it. I don't have to like it. I think it's weird. Why? That whole thing is completely weird and I don't want to talk about it, but I have to talk about more weird things because Stephanie writes it this way, and I don't like. The first part of this book was really sweet and kind of heart-wrenching, with Bella like literally saying goodbye to her parents because she was planning on dying. Now it's just weird and gross, okay? Because Jacob finds out that Bella is pregnant, right? She comes back, she's really sick, she's not a vampire, he's confused by all of this, and then she stands up and she got a big old belly, and he says probably the grossest thing I've ever read in my entire life, which is saying something. I've read a lot of books. This is the grossest thing I've ever read in my fucking life, okay? I'm gonna read it to you. If I have to sever, you damn well do too. There was no way that she could be pregnant. Not that pregnant. Except that she was. I didn't want to see this. I didn't want to think about this. I didn't want to imagine him inside her. I didn't want to know that something I hated so much had taken root in the body I loved. Ew, 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 gross. Why would you, why was that written? Who allowed that to get published? Who edited this book? Who wrote this book? Stephanie wrote the book. Who let this get to print? Why didn't any of them take that out? There were multiple opportunities to take that line out. No, I'm gonna let that sit for a minute, actually. Let's go ahead and sit with that. I'll wait. No, usually I cut out every single breath I take in these videos. We're gonna sit with this one in silence for a minute. fucking gross. So he finds out she's pregnant. He's upset about that, and he says it in the worst way possible. And then he finds out that it's killing her, because obviously it is. There's a demon baby in her, and she's a person and not like supernaturally inclined quite yet. Is the lighting okay on this, guys? I'm gonna need you to be so for real with me. Okay, anyways, so he's upset about that. Edward comes up to him and is like, listen, I need you to get rid of this baby. All right? He looks at him and he's like, we both love her. I know you love her. And we are on the same page that that thing inside her needs to die. And Jacob's like, yeah, obviously. Where are you going with this? And Edward says, I want to quote this. I'm not even going to put on the glasses because, like, it's bad. He says, I will give her anything she wants. You know that. You know I'd give her anything. But she can't have this because it's killing her. But if she wants a baby, I'll give her a baby. I'll give her 1,000,000 babies. And Jacob's confused because she can't have a baby, as previously mentioned. And then he says, I can give her puppies. We can give her puppies. What the fuck? What the fuck? Remember when I made those jokes about brother husbands? Edward's for it. He's ready to be a brother husband. I'm convinced. I know the sister wives, they didn't turn out too great, but I believe in Edward, Bella, and Jacob. I think they could do it. Anyways, Jacob is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Absolutely not. No, that was a weird thing to ask me. It was a weird thing to ask of me, by the way, just so you know. And then he goes up to Bella and is like, if you want puppies, Edward's cool with it. We could just do that so we can get rid of this thing in you. And she's like, what the why would you ask that? What is wrong with you? Everybody's down for brother husbands except for Bella, just in case you were curious. And then he goes back to the pack and he basically is like kind of forced to tell them what's going on with Bella because he transforms into a wolf and they're like, demon baby. And then Sam is like, okay, so we have to kill Bella. And Jacob doesn't want to do that, but he has to because the alpha said so. Basically, they were like, we're gonna try not to kill Bella, but she needs to die so that the demon baby will also die. Okay, let's go. They're, running through the forest or whatever, and eventually Stephanie has this weird line that I don't like. Oh God, I don't know how to pronounce this man's name. Ephraim Black Sun was not born to follow Levi Yuli's. I don't know why that feels really weird to me. Like, I guess it's kind of like this idea of divine right, which I also hate because it's racist. But whatever, we have this big tension around Jacob having to follow the alpha. And it's like a big part of his character is that he doesn't like to be controlled and he doesn't want this. And then he solves it by being like, wait a second. I'm supposed to be the alpha. I'm free now. Does Stephanie hate having interesting conflict resolution? Is this just something she hates that she cannot do? Like, that's the build-up. This was a new moon. Since new moon, we've been building up to this. And he just decides? He just closes his eyes and thinks really hard and then he's all better now? He doesn't even have to fight it that bad. Let him work for it, girl. Come on. It makes it so uninteresting, okay? Because, I was kind of for it. Having him struggle and having to be like, no, I don't want to do this, but I'm forced to do this. And he's struggling. And I would have loved to see him, struggle to where, his body is actively fighting against him. He can't breathe because he's trying to disobey this order, and his body is just not made for it. Until finally, he hits this point, and he's able to break through it. None of that. There is no dramatic tension, nothing. He's like, I don't want to do this. I'm the alpha of my own pack now. The wolves would be so interesting. They're so interesting. But Stephanie Meyer hates me. So he's his own little alpha guy now, and he goes up and he warns them. Seth is my favorite little vampire little boy. He's my baby boy. He says, no, I'm not going to do that because I think it's dumb that we hate each other for no reason. Because he likes the vampires. He's like, they're people. I like people. So Seth is team vampire because they're not evil murderers or anything, right? So he's team vampire. So he just is also like, I don't want to be in Sam's pack because Sam wants me to kill those guys. So I guess I'm in Jacob's pack now. I know I already talked about the dramatic tension. I think it's fine when Seth is just like, nah, I'm good. That's fine. That's good writing. I don't care because I think it's funny. That also means that Leah, I'm gonna say Leah, joins the pack too because her little brother joins the pack and she was tired of Sam because they were dating and then he imprinted on somebody else. So now they're not dating and that's annoying because everybody else is mean to her because she's mourning the fact that she really loved this guy and he broke up with her for like no reason, essentially. And then Sam, whole thought process is like, oh, I think her name is Emily. I love Emily. Oh, Emily's the love of my life now. And so she has to hear that all the time, which is also really upsetting. And then they're all like mad at her about it, which, okay. So here's the thing. Stephanie doesn't like Rosalie. She doesn't like Jacob, and she doesn't like Leia. And those are like honestly some of the most interesting characters in this book when they're written well. So like Rosalie's whole character arc is very interesting. Jacob, when he's not being an asshole, is very, very interesting. He's an interesting guy, okay? Leia's so interesting, and I really like her, and I like her interactions with Jacob because she doesn't let Jacob get away with nonsense the way Bella does. If it was up to me, I do think Leia and Jacob would have made a way better couple than what is about to happen, simply because she is like very honest and straightforward and doesn't let him get away with things. The biggest problem about her is that she is also hates the werewolves for the vampires for seemingly no reason. So there's that. She never like comes around to them, even though like Seth is cool with them. You'd think knowing that your little brother hasn't gotten eaten yet would really be the deciding factor, but whatever. Seth, Leah, and Jacob are defending the vampires, and mainly Bella, from the separate werewolf pack. They also learn, by the way, that when they're in two separate packs, they can't talk to each other in their little werewolf mind link thing. Does that make sense? They're defending them, and Jacob and Carlisle are actually kind of really upset about this because like they never wanted them to have to alienate themselves from their family. For them, that seems like a lot. And so Seth and Leia and Jacob are all kind of like at least flattered by the idea that they wouldn't have asked that of them. Edward even says like, I asked you to impregnate my wife, even though you love her and she doesn't love you back. I asked you to do that, but I would never ask you to go against your family. Going off of this, it means that Jacob gets really close to a lot of the other vampires. He gets closer to Edward because they're kind of on the same page right now of like, Bella is like dying and we need to stop that. So we are on team. We gotta keep Bella alive. And then Alice actually ends up forming a little bit of a connection with him because she is having such a difficult time trying to see if Bella will live through this pregnancy, and the baby is like blocking her vision and stuff, and it's giving her like migraines. But when she's next to Jacob, she can't see anything. It's quiet. That's what she describes it. She says it's like quiet. So she ends up hanging out with him a lot because it's the only time she gets a break. Also, Seth is already cool with all of them. He's just hanging out. Esme ends up like feeding them because she's mom coded. So she just like feeds them and clothes them and such. And Carlisle's doing the same thing and also being like, I'm so sorry you have to be involved in this, by the way. This was not my choice. Oh, this is also a cute little moment. I like mentioning cute moments because we don't get very many of them with Jacob. And when he's friends with Edward, he's kind of fun. And when he's friends with Bella, he's kind of fun. And then when he's an asshole, he's not fun anymore. Except when he's like, wants to not control people. Like as soon as Seth and Leah become part of his pack, by the way, this is kind of important for his character. He kind of promises to never use the Alpha command on them because he finds it morally wrong. I think the only time he ever uses it is to get them out of danger quickly, when he's like, go away, don't come back. And other than that, he doesn't use it. And this is something that Leia is especially really grateful for because she also doesn't like this controlling aspect that Sam especially had on her, because that was her ex-boyfriend who fell in love with somebody else who everybody was mad at her for being upset about that. If you can't tell, I'm really passionate about Leia's story and how like she is given the shitty end of everything for her life. It's really messed up. I'm gonna read you a little quote of Edward and Bella and Jacob all being pals because I think it's funny. So this is right after Edward is reading minds again, right? And Jacob thinks it's really annoying because he answers people out loud of things that they said in their head, so like nobody else is on the same page as him, and also your thoughts are being invaded by a man, right? Jeez, how did anyone stand living with him? It was really too bad he couldn't hear Bella's thoughts. Then he'd annoy the crap out of her too, and she'd get tired of him. Edward chuckled once. Bella's eyes flicked to him immediately, and she half smiled at the humor in his face. I would guess that wasn't something she'd seen in a while. Something funny? She breathed. Jacob, he answered. She looked over with another weary smile for me. Jake's a crack-up, she agreed. Great, now I was the court jester. Bada bing, I mumbled in a weak rim-shot impression. I don't know, I think it's funny that Jacob makes Edward laugh. Like, that's cute. The baby is eating Bella. That seems jarring, but this baby is, like, actively really hurting Bella. She is heavily, like, so thin, she's emancipated practically. She can't keep anything down. She's got bruises all over her body. Like, there is something very seriously wrong. Until somebody is like, oh, the baby is hungry. They feed her some blood, finally. Fucking duh. This entire time she's been complaining about how the baby is, like, it's It's making her weak. She can't keep anything down, and it's like actively eating her, obviously. And nobody was like, well, maybe it's hungry for something a little different than mashed potatoes. No, it takes them until Bella is like nearly on her deathbed to finally get her a cup of blood, which, by the way, they give to her in a styrofoam cup. I need you to know that I write in these books, right? And like, I'd say 50% of what I wrote in this book was the quote, rolling my eyes whenever I rolled my eyes. This happened frequently. And them giving her a little styrofoam cup so that she can't see what's in it. And Jacob's like, they can't see what's in it, but I could smell it. Girl, blood is like kind of normal to eat in a lot of cultures too. By the way, in case you didn't know that, there's like blood sausage. That's popular in England. Just give her some blood sausage, dog. I don't understand what the problem is. So they give her the blood, and she starts to get a little bit better. They're all still chilling. Bella's doing a little bit better, but not by much. She's still extremely weak. Rosalie is watching over her like a hawk, because if you remember, I didn't really touch on this, but if you remember, Bella called Rosalie at the end of her part of the book, her path. She called Rosalie. And since then, Rosalie has been protecting Bella from Carlisle and Edward from doing anything to her. She called Rosalie, said, I want to have this baby, and Rosalie said, I like you. I like the baby more than you. I'm willing to let you die for the idea, for the concept of a child, which, very funny. Bella was like, I need to call somebody who would be really cool with me dying. Hey, what's up, Rosalie? How you doing? And Rosalie said, no problem, babe. I'm on it. The colons are actually split up right now, kind of in like for the baby, against the baby. You have Carlisle and Edward against the baby, right? But Esme is for the baby, and Rosalie is for the baby, which means Emmett's for the baby because he just listens to Rosalie. He's my favorite man in this book. He hangs out with Rosalie because like she is his favorite colon by far. Like, I don't even think he likes Carlisle or anybody else except for Rosalie in that household. And he just hangs out with her, and whenever she tells him to do something, he just does it. It doesn't matter. Like, he's cool with Bella. It doesn't matter that she's gonna die. Rosalie said let her die, so he said okay. And I believe Alice and Jasper are kind of like in the middle, sort of more towards against the baby because they don't know what's gonna happen to Bella. And like, Alice really cares about them, but also Bella really wants a baby, and they don't want to go against that. So that's what's been happening. And also that means that Rosalie and Jacob have been interacting a lot, and they just hate each other, like pure unadulterated hatred that turns into them just teasing each other constantly. It's actually really funny. Like I said, Jacob has an interesting rapport with all of these vampires, and so I wish the book was just about the werewolves and the vampire. I don't care about Bella. I like Bella, she's funny, but like, if the main plot of this book was about the werewolves and the vampires like being pals and like having to deal with each other, that would be so much fun. Are you kidding me? Yeah, they go back and forth. Like, there is some racist stuff where like she feeds him out of a dog bowl, which I understand he is a werewolf, but also he is a person of color, and you cannot compare people of color to animals. There is a long history of that being very racist. I feel dumb having to explain that to people. So Bella was getting a little bit better now that they're feeding her blood, but her body still cannot handle the baby that's inside of her. It breaks one of her ribs. Jesus Christ. Anyways, this is when Jacob finds out that Edward has stopped like kind of fighting her on these things in a hope to not cause her any more anxiety. And also that Bella is planning on getting turned into a vampire and surviving this whole aspect and seeing Charlie again. She does not think she's gonna die from this, or at least not permanently. Everybody else disagrees. Jacob's kind of upset about this. He goes into a werewolf form, and this is when we find out a little bit more about Leia, which is a couple more parts where I rolled my eyes a lot. Okay, number one, apparently Leia stopped getting her periods. So she doesn't actually know if she's still fertile because of that. And the way it's described pisses me off. She calls it a genetic dead end, which I don't know why Stephanie wrote it like that. That's really messed up. No longer gets her periods anymore. And they find out because Leia panicked, all throughout the pack line, and they were all like grossed out about it. It says, and then when the weeks dragged on and nothing turned into more nothing, she realized that her body wasn't following the normal patterns anymore. The horror was, what was she now? Had her body changed because she became a werewolf, or had she became a werewolf because her body was wrong? The only female in werewolf history of forever. Was that because she wasn't as female as she should be? What the fuck? There has been, throughout this entire book, a disregard for people who are infertile for whatever reason and thus have to have babies by other means, be it adoption or whatever, and how that makes you less of a woman, which is really fucked up for like a lot of reasons. This is just one of them. It's also like weirdly transphobic too. I'm not gonna ignore that part, but like, why? Yeah, I think that's my final question, actually. And then, of course, we have the realization of how Leia makes them all uncomfortable. I think it was either before this or after this. I don't know. Because you're naked when you're a werewolf, and so they're all, female nudity. It's like, you are werewolf. You're supposed to be natural, like naturalist. And the thought of a girl not having clothes on is like, what does it in for you? Like, you can't handle that? Like, I don't understand this concept of like no secrets between the pack. And then, they're close knit and they're totally tight, except with the only girl in the group who they're all like mortally disgusted and offended by because she has normal bodily functions. Jacob goes back to the house. They're all kind of chilling about, relaxing. It's actually pretty chill. And then Edward like stops and freezes and like stares at Bella and was like, what did you say? She's like, I didn't say anything. What are you talking about? Did you think something? What were you thinking about? She's like, nothing. And then she says what she was thinking about, and he's like still staring at her intently, and he's like, say it again. And so she does, and he goes, I think the baby likes the sound of your voice. And this is when we find out that Edward has started hearing the baby's thoughts, which is really interesting for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's suggesting that thought occurs in the womb, which I don't know if it does. It's suggesting that the baby was not cognizant for the rest of this, which is really interesting because Bella was convinced that it understood her when it was nudging her, but I guess it wasn't. She also admits here is that she was going to name him EJ if it's a boy, and if it's a girl, Renesmee. I believe EJ is short for Edward Jacob. So, okay. And Renesmee is, of course, Renee and Esme, her biological mother, with Edward's mother. Their names combined. Edward is hearing the baby, and he finds out that the baby loves Bella. The baby adores Bella, okay? And then he decides right then and there that, okay, that means the baby's not gonna hurt Bella, so we should keep the baby. And that's when Jacob realizes that he is the only person right now advocating for just Bella, right? Nobody else is advocating for the health of just Bella. He's the only one. Everybody else cares about this baby. Anyway, so he realizes he's all alone in this, and then he's freaking out because he loves Bella so much, so then he has to go to an airport and try to stare at girls until he imprints on one. Like, okay then. Leah goes over and yells at Bella because it's rude to Jacob that she wants him as a friend. Okay. Edward is like, look, I am upset that you're suffering. I don't want you to suffer. He says he thinks of Jacob as a brother in many ways, a comrade in arms, at the very least. And then he's like, I know you think Bella isn't going to survive, but she is. He's decided that the baby is definitely not going to hurt her, and even if it does, he's like, I have to ask you something. You are the alpha now, Jacob, so you need to give me something now. And he's like, I can't give you anything. I've done everything possible. And he says, no, you haven't. You need to let me do what I need to do to make sure Bella survives this. That is turn her into a vampire, essentially. And so Jacob is like a little out of it, but he's like, I am asking you as the heir to the pack if I can turn Bella into a vampire to save her life. So he's like still debating this. He's like, it's Sam you want the permission from, and Edward's like, no, you are the alpha of the pack. It's you. And then he goes and he talks to Bella a little bit, knowing that it's almost time, the baby is almost ready to be delivered. He's like, you know what? Despite everything, Bella is my best friend. It's not Leia. I like Leia. She's a good companion. She's a good friend, but she's not my best friend. Bella is. So yes, you can do what you have to save her. Edward's like, thank you. I will do everything in my power to make sure I don't have to do it, but if I do have to do it, it will happen. And then somebody hands her a cup of the blood or whatever, and she drops it, and then she reaches over to grab it. What's described as happening is this. There was the strangest muffled ripping sound from the center of her body. Rosalie catches her. Edward asks after her and says, Bella. And then a half second later, Bella screamed. It was not just a scream, it was a blood-curdling shriek of agony. The horrifying sound cut off with a gurgle, and her eyes rolled back into her head. Her body twitched, arched in Rosalie's arms, and then Bella vomited a fountain of blood. No! Kill it with fire! Huh? Anyways, baby's ready to be born right fucking now. I think it's like her spine broke or something. You know, Jacob's screaming after him, like, what is happening? She's dying, clearly. They get her the morphine, they're getting her on the table, and Edward's like, he can't breathe, and he's like, what does that even mean? And Edward says the placenta must have detached. I don't know a lot about birth, but I know that placenta is very important to baby's life. So then this is where Bella, like, kind of wakes up, and she's like, get him out now. Edward's like, we need to let the morphine spread. And then so Rosalie comes over and she's like, we can't wait for the morphine to spread, and she takes a knife and cuts open Bella's belly, and then like she freezes, and Edward screams at her, and Jacob throws her to the ground because they both realize at the same time, or Edward hears her thoughts and then Jacob realizes what's going on, that she has gone into bloodlust, which doesn't make sense because she has the most control out of all of the Cullens, but whatever. So she goes into a bloodlust, but she doesn't fight very hard against Jacob when he like throws himself at her and like holds her down. She wanted him to win, essentially, and he admits that. So Alice grabs Rosalie, and then Jacob goes back to where Edward is with Bella, who is again dying right now. So is the baby. Edward asks him to do CPR. He starts doing CPR on her, and then this is when the baby breaks her spine. So Jacob is like, get it out of her now. He's thinking at Bella to like keep her heart beating because she promised to do that. I'm kind of reading this verbatim for you because this is a very tense scene, and Stephanie does do a really good job of writing this, and I kind of want you guys to know like what's going on. Edward pushes his face against Bella's stomach and bites his way through to get the baby out. And Edward is like, it's Renesmee, it's a girl. And Bella, who is out of it, can barely see anything. She's bleeding so much, her spine is broken, and she's just like a pile of bones at this point, is about to die, is like, give the baby to me. So they give the baby to her and holds the baby to her chest like you're supposed to. Skin to skin contact is very important during the first beginning of birth. But Renesmee bites her titty. Edward has to take it away, and Jacob's still freaking out. Basically, her heart begins to stop, she's flatlining, and so Jacob is like, okay, well, you need to do your job now, Edward. And then he's like, but the baby, and he's like, throw it out the window, which is very funny. And then I think it's Rosalie comes back in. Yeah, Rosalie comes back in. She's like, give me the baby. I'm fine now. So they take the baby. And then there's some really cool imagery that reminded me a lot of the first book. If you guys remember, in the first book, Edward rips off a woman's head by biting her throat off. But from what Bella could see, it looked like he was kissing her in a very romantic sense. And I was really impressed with this because it was kind of a metaphor for Bella's relationship with Edward. And that imagery kind of comes back here. So I want to read it to you. It was like he was kissing her, brushing his lips at her throat, at her wrist, into the crease at the inside of her arm, but I could hear the lush tearing of her skin as his teeth bit through again and again, forcing venom into her system at as many points as possible. Again, it's an interesting parallel to their relationship as a whole, that now that image is being turned back on Bella, right? Jacob eventually gives up because he realizes that her heart isn't beating. The venom doesn't have anywhere to go if the blood isn't pumping. So he kind of moves out of the way, and Edward hears that and like pushes him out the way and is like, leave then, because this is gonna work. I'm not giving up. And he starts forcefully pumping her heart, essentially faster than Jacob did. And then Jacob leaves because he thinks Bella is dead. He goes downstairs and he's like, you know what? Bella didn't listen to me. This is the thing that killed her. I'm gonna kill the baby now. So he goes downstairs. He looks at Renesmee and imprints on the baby. It is described as follows. Everything that made me who I was. My love for the dead girl upstairs, my love for my father, my loyalty to my new pack, the love for my other brothers, my hatred for my enemies, my home, my name, myself, disconnected from me in that second. Snip, 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 and floated up into space. I was not left drifting. A new string held me where I was. Not one string, but a million. Not strings, but steel cables. A million steel cables all tying me to one thing, to the very center of the universe. I could see that now, how the universe swirled around this one point. I'd never seen the symmetry of the universe before, but now it was plain. The gravity of the earth no longer tied me to the place where I stood. It was the baby girl in the blonde vampire's arms that held me there now. Renesmee. So he imprints on the baby. We knew this was coming. We all knew this was coming. Still didn't want to read it, though. Still didn't want to have to talk about it, though. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't... I didn't want this. Who wanted this? Who asked for this? Be honest. I'm coming to your house. So yeah, he imprints on the baby. At the very end of that chapter, from upstairs, there was a new sound. The only sound that could touch me in this endless instant. A frantic, pounding, a racing beat. A changing heart. And then we go to book 3, which is Bella, of course, because she survived. Surprise! Hate to spoil it for you. That's Jacob's point of view of this book. It's a very interesting change in the series. I didn't like it. I mean, I liked it well enough. He was interesting to read about. I'll talk about it a little bit more, obviously. I don't want to break up the flow of the summary too much. So we're going to go on to book 3, which is, of course, Bella's point of view of her now being a vampire. We'll move on to part 3. Hopefully that worked the way I wanted it to. Hey y'all! So I realized that YouTube had never seen the new and improved Bella wig. So like, of course I had to do the full Bella Swan cosplay for the last part of the last book. There's hair everywhere. This is the last book, right? The way Stephanie split it up, but I'm gonna split it up a little bit more because you know how she writes, guys. The action doesn't get in until later. So we're going through this part of the book next, and this is gonna be after this part. We're on book 3. We're on Bella's Pav again, right after we finish Jacob's point of view, you know, after he fell in love with the baby. Is this framing okay, guys? I hope so, because I'm not changing it. Hold on. Don't mind that. Don't mind all that noises. Don't mind those noises. It's fine. Hey, stop focusing on those noises. Bella is in excruciating agony. So the venom sucks, like a lot. It hurts a lot, okay? And she finds that she cannot move. She's frozen. She cannot scream. She cannot let anybody know that she is in agony. And she is in agony, girl. We find out later this is because of the morphine that they gave them, or gave her. The idea that Carlisle had was like, okay, well, if being a vampire hurts so bad, if we give somebody painkillers before we give them the venom, maybe it won't hurt so bad. The answer to that is no, actually. It's worse because they can't scream out in pain. They're just paralyzed. She can like barely tell what's going on around her, and then she starts to become more and more aware of like the fact that there's people there and they're asking her to wake up and stuff. But she's just in pain and doesn't want to do anything. But the pain finally like lightens up enough so that she can like fully comprehend what's going on around her. And it's her vampire family, and they're all standing around her, and they're like, Alice, how much longer? And she's like, soon. I can see her now because of the stupid baby's not in the way anymore. So they're like observing her, waiting patiently, and she's starting to hear them more. She's becoming more and more aware. And then her eyes open, and she's ready to be a vampire now. So she wakes up. First of all, she says that everything is like so much sharper and clearer, and like, yeah, that's something we were expecting because you're a vampire now, right? But then she's like, there was an 8th color that I didn't have a name for. Vampires see in shrimp colors? What is going on? Everything is like super clear now. She can hear like the freeway. She can see the dust, like little microscopic little pieces all around her. And then something grabs her. And she describes it as like 1/8 of a second of her reacting to stuff, alright? So it's fucking quick, okay? So something grabs her and she jerks away from it and like is on her feet and standing far away like, what? Who is that? And it takes her a minute because, again, there's dust everywhere and she's seeing everything. When all of a sudden she sees Edward. She's like, Edward. Oh, the reason I didn't recognize his touch is because it wasn't cold. We're the same temperature now, right? So now she's frozen and she's describing everything that's happening in her peripherals too. So, like, she's still paying attention to a lot of things at once. But she's focusing on Edward and she's like, wow. He's so pretty. She's an Edward girly first and foremost, okay? That's the most important thing in her life. So she's got to comment on that. Anyway, so he's like, everything's good. And she's like, what does everything mean? Okay, be more specific. But Carlisle jumps in before she can actually talk about it. And he's like, you're doing really well. You're very controlled right now, Bella. We're all impressed. And this is when she's like, the morphine made it. I didn't feel a thing. She's a liar. How rude for the next vampire that they might possibly turn. Bella, we get it. You want to suffer in silence. But girl, if I'm getting turned after you and you tell everybody the morphine works and it doesn't, it just traps you in a hell of pain, I might murder you. Oh, my fan is on. I'm back now. So she's being like super duper controlled and perfect because obviously, right? Carlisle's like, what do you remember? And it occurs to her suddenly that her human memories are like weird and fuzzy and like blurry, and so she does like a face, I guess, because Carlisle is like, oh, I'm so sorry, you must be starving. And she's like, am I? Oh, I am kind of hungry. Now that you mention it, I am a little peckish. Now that you mention it, I didn't realize. I could go for something. She hasn't noticed that she's supposed to be starving, and that's something that's also confusing her, because she's like, why am I still in love with Edward? Aren't I supposed to be a bloodthirsty vampire now? And she's not. She's just chilling. But they keep bringing up the thirst, and whenever they bring it up, it's like, if somebody's like, don't scratch your head. Suddenly your head is like itchy, right? Speaking of, with this stupid wig. I shouldn't have said that, because now my head is itchy. But it's like that with her thirst, right? So she doesn't notice that her throat is like burning unless somebody brings it up to her. She doesn't quite want to go hunting yet, because her whole life got turned upside down, and there's people she's worried about, like Jacob and Carla or Charlie and Renesmee. She asked after Renesmee, and she's like, can I see her? And they're like, girl, she has a human heart. No. So then she's like, oh, I need to call Charlie. I need to do that. And like, why is Jacob here? He shouldn't be here anymore. He should hate me now. And they're like, girl, you're supposed to be thirsty. And she's like, oh, now that you mention it, I am kind of thirsty. But I really need to call Charlie. Like, she's all over the place, kind of. And they're like, keep trying to refocus her on what she's supposed to be focusing on, which is her bloodthirstiness. But then Alice is like, wait, everybody hold on. We have something more important to deal with than everything else in this entire room. We need to let Bella see what she looks like now. Vampire transformation is actually kind of horrifying. Girl, what is going on? Anyways, whatever. The vampire transformation is actually a little bit more horrifying than one might assume, okay? Because Bella looks in the mirror and does not recognize herself, which is terrifying. She says she's like staring at it, trying to find some similarity, right? And she's like, I guess my top lip was always bigger than my bottom lip, and it still is. And she's like heartwarmed by that fact, or whatever. And it's like, that's terrifying. The concept of looking in a mirror and not recognizing the person staring back is a very scary concept. So it's interesting to me that was the choice Stephanie made. Like, that's what we're doing right now. I mean, go off, I guess, but Jesus. But you'll notice throughout all of this, Bella's been bouncing from emotion to emotion, but she kind of like stops herself whenever she's upset, and she's like, okay, girl, calm down. We can't do this right now. We have more important things to focus on. And this is when Jasper finally speaks up, he's been standing like silent in the corner of the room, and he's like, how are you doing that? She's like, doing what? He's like, controlling your emotions. You get upset, and then you stop it, and you rein it back in. I've never seen a newborn do that. She's like, what, like it's hard? No, he's shocked by this, because all of the other newborns he's ever met or worked with have gone bloodthirsty in the first like 2 minutes of being born. And Bella's not doing that. She's being relatively normal. She's just being Bella. We'll talk about it. She's like looking in the mirror, like I said. Edward like sighs or something. And she's like, are you disappointed? Because I'm like completely fucking different looking now. And he says yes. Then he's like, I thought that now that we were similar, I might be able to read your mind. I would have thrown a fit. Are you kidding me? Not the time. We would have had an argument, okay? If I was Bella, that would have started an argument. That would have been an argument. I'm throwing hands. I'm upset. Why would you say that to me? Clearly, I'm in the middle of something. Edward, now is not the time for your little fucking jokes. But she's like hurt, right? She's like, and then he like finished, and everybody freezes because she gets upset, and they're like, she's gonna freak out. But she just kind of stands there. And then Edward is like, I thought I could read your mind, and now I can't. And so then they hug, and everybody's still freaking out. And Edward is like, okay, we need to go hunting, or else Jasper's gonna lose his mind right now because you're being chill. And maybe if you go hunting, he'll feel better. She's like kind of nervous to like jump out of the second story window or like run really fast. So all of that is still like a learning curve for her, but she picks it up pretty quickly, right? They're like, okay, let's go hunting. Except she does kiss Edward first, and she is surprised that she can still do that or whatever. Everybody's shocked by everything Bella's doing besides wanting to go eat people, right? They go into the woods, and she's like, okay, let's do this hunting thing. And he's like trying to walk her through all the steps, like, oh, can you like smell like what's going on? How many are there? You know, whatever. When all of a sudden, a different scent fills Bella's little nose, her little nostrils. Remember back in the day, the little whoosh, 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 whoosh. The breeze is carrying the scent of a human. So she like goes after it. She's like, that smells good. I'm gonna get some. So she's like running after it when she realizes she's being followed, which I should mention, Edward is like still a little faster than her. She's stronger, but he's still a little faster. So she is smelling the scent. She's realizing something's chasing her. So she stops, like, what is going on? She's in full beast mode, okay? So she like snarls at him and everything. And then she realizes that it's Edward, and she like stops. And then she's like, that is so embarrassing that I just snarled at you. Oh my God. Her embarrassment cuts through this like tangible hunger she has. And she's like, oh my god, that is so, did I just do that? Oh my god, I need to get out of here. She's like, I need to get out of here. She says that out loud, and Edward is like, can you? Like, he's shocked. So she like holds her breath so she can't smell it, and she like gets out of Dodge. So they end up in a clearing, and she's like, at first she's mad at him, because this is when she realized that he is still faster than her, and like he let her win. So she's pissed about that. She's like, you let me win? And he's like, not the point, girl. You just ran away from some tasty blood right now. Yeah, I'm so sorry that I totally like hissed at you. That was like embarrassing. Like, oh my god. And he's like, what? Apparently, she is doing immensely well, all right? This should not be possible, but she's handling her emotions. She's keeping them in check, and she's like, well, they are powerful. I knew I would have powerful emotions, so I'm just, like, being rational or whatever. Not that hard. I didn't realize this is what you were struggling with. It's actually really easy. She actually does go and hunt a lion afterwards, and then they get back, and she's, like, covered in blood or whatever. Going back, before she hunts a lion, he's like, how did you do this? How did you run away from the human, right? She's like, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just, like, good at this. Well, I knew there was going to be powerful emotions, so, like, maybe I was prepared for this before I went into it, rather than every other vampire who didn't get to have this preparedness, right? And then they, like, make out again, and he stops, and he's like, aren't you unbearably thirsty? And she's like, well, because you keep mentioning it, yeah. And then he's like, okay, well, now that we've hunted, because she goes and kills a mountain lion or something. She's like, he's like, now that we've hunted, let's go meet Renesmee, because you seem to be doing, like, remarkably well. Now that he brought up Renesmee, just like when he brings up the thirst, it's, like, on her mind. Like, now that's what she's focused on, okay? And everybody's like, absolutely not. She cannot meet the baby. Are you for real? He's like, she ran away from human. She smelled human and ran away, held her breath and ran away. And that convinces all of them. And Jacob is there, and she's confused. She's like, why are you're here? What's going on? And he's acting awful suspicious. They haven't told Bella what's up. She's gonna find out. She's not gonna be happy. And then Rosalie finally brings in Renesmee, and we get a description of her. It's horrifying. I'm going to read it to you. She hears that it was just 2 days that she was asleep, but the baby they bring out is not a newborn baby. The stranger child in Rosalie's arms had to be weeks, if not months old. She was maybe twice the size of the baby in my dim memory, and she seemed to be supporting her own torso easily as she stretched towards me. Her shining bronze-colored hair fell in ringlets past her shoulders. Her chocolate brown eyes examined me with an interest that was not at all childlike. It was an adult, aware and intelligent. She raised one hand, reaching in my direction for a moment, and then reached back to touch Rosalie's throat. What? The more she describes babies and childbirth makes me not want to have children. That's why this book is a metaphor for abstinence, because it works great as one. Yeah, the baby's creepy. It also has a full set of teeth, by the way. Rosalie's still holding her, and she kind of like reaches, Renesmee reaches out towards Bella and then kind of reaches back towards Rosalie, and then she smiles at Bella with her perfect white teeth, and Bella's like, takes a step forward, and everybody freaks out, except for Rosalie. Rosalie is like, no. She wants a closer look. Because, by the way, Rosalie loves Renesmee. That's her baby. They're all worried again, and this is when Edward's like, she held her breath when the human was there. She'll be fine. They finally give Bella the baby, and Rosalie's like, Jacob starts freaking out, by the way, and Rosalie's like, Jacob, calm down, all right? It'll be fine. And Bella clocks that. Bella does clock that immediately, which I do have to give props for, because a lot of people will call Bella, like, stupid or whatever. She's very observant when she wants to be. She notices things. Sometimes she just doesn't connect dots or whatever. She notices immediately that there is something up with Jacob. For some reason, Rosalie is reassuring Jacob. That's not normal. Something is up. She's holding Renesmee, and then Renesmee reaches up to her face and like holds it like so, like this. Yeah, except it's like a little baby hand, and she is like thrown into an image of the childbirth, except it's from the wrong point of view. She's seeing it through Renesmee's eyes. She's seeing this image, and then it stops, and Renesmee pulls her hand back, and she's like, what the fuck was that? And everybody's like, isn't that like nifty? Isn't that so cool that she can do that? And she's like, what did she do? She finds out that Renesmee has like powers kind of like Edward's, except for the opposite. So instead of reading people's thoughts, she can kind of project her thoughts onto people, like that type of memory. This is how she's been communicating like forever. So they have no idea what real childhood is like, what real childcare is like, because she just tells them if she's like hungry or not. She doesn't just start crying and never let you know what's up. But she showed Bella that memory because it was the only memory she had of Bella, and she was like worried about her, which is again kind of really sweet. Stephanie has these moments when she's writing scene where, like, you get it, you know? Like, it hits right. Jacob keeps, like, getting angry and anxious and stuff. She's clocking this, and then Jacob takes Renesmee from her, and she's like, what is going on? Because you wanted that thing dead, like 2 days ago. Literally 2 days ago. So somebody needs to explain something to me really quickly, because this doesn't make any sense. And then eventually, it, like, hits her, because he's looking at Renesmee, and I quote, because again, all of this part of the book is actually really good, I'll admit it. I puzzled over it, watching him stare at my daughter, staring at her like he was a blind man seeing the sun for the first time. No, I gasped. And then, like a little paragraph down, she's like, this is so funny. She's like, Rose, I said through my teeth, very slowly and precisely, take Renesmee. So Rosalie holds her hands out and Jacob gives her the baby because duh. And she's like, no, you did not.
Well, the thing about it is...
And she's like, you didn't. You didn't. You wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that.
And Jacob's there looking like an idiot.
Well, she's a very pretty baby. No, he actually says the words like it was involuntary. I wouldn't have, like, I had no control over it, which again, I hate this. I just hate it. Not much to it. And she's like, you know, I'm not even gonna listen to you. I'm so mad right now. And again, she's at heightened vampire senses. Funny about this part too is like she's advancing on him and he says something, and you know, everybody's following them too, but she's advancing on him, like getting closer, like I'm gonna eat you because I'm a vampire now. And he's like, he says that line that's in the movie too. You know it's not like that. Do you think Edward would have let me live this long? Blah, 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 blah. She like growls at him. And behind her, Edward goes, amazing, isn't she? I heard Edward murmur. She hasn't gone for his throat even once, Carlisle agreed, sounding stunned. So that's funny, is the rest of the vampires are like, wow, she hasn't even tried to kill you yet, dog. This is amazing. While Jacob's like, help? A little help here, guys? No, they're all impressed with Bella. And then this is when it happens. You know what? She's like, you need to run away. I'm going to get you. Whatever. Stephanie, in this moment, by the way, implies that the reason Bella liked Jacob and Jacob liked Bella is because of Renesmee. So why didn't he like Edward then? Kind of sounds like he should have had a crush on both of them. But whatever. He's like, come on, Bells. Nessie likes me too. And she freezes. What did you call her? And he takes like another step back and he's like, well, the name you came up with is kind of a mouthful and you nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster? And then she lunges for his throat. Should I do it again? Because I'm in the outfit. You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster? No, that wasn't good. What did you just call her? You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster? You can't hit that good. You have to give a lot of props to Christian Stewart because you can't say that. Like, good. It's too much of a mouthful. Like, it's too much, Stephanie. Trim the fat, Steph. God. What did you just say? You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster? Was that better? What do we think? Rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Oh, right. She attacks Jacob. But then Seth jumps in front and we find out about this because Edward is apologizing to Seth. And Bella's like really embarrassed about this again, which is so funny because everybody is expecting her to flip out. But every time she even like starts to, she's like so embarrassed. Stop it. She's like so embarrassed by it, which is something I think would happen to me if I was a vampire. So then Seth, this is funny by the way, I'm going to mention this every single time it happens and I'm going to read you the quote every single time it happens because I think it's hilarious. But then Seth is talking and he like, don't worry about it, you know, I was hurt but I'm a werewolf, I'll be back to normal in like an hour, it's whatever. Anyone would have done the same, what, with Jake and Ness? He broke off mid-word and changed the subject quickly. I mean, at least you didn't bite me or anything, that would have sucked. He was gonna call her Nessie and then he stopped because that's what made Bella flip out last time. Oh, by the way, this is also when Stephanie Meyer decides to drop in the fact that vampire venom is poisonous to them. So every single time I was like, why do they hate each other? It's not innate. It's not innate. It's not natural. There's no reason for them to naturally hate each other. Why wasn't this in book 2? I hate her. I got a hole in my mouth, apparently. Anyways, I got so scared right then that wasn't recording. Oh god, I hope you can see the fear on my face. And this is when we see that Jasper is really upset, and Edward mentions that it's because the whole concept of being a newborn has changed for them, because every other newborn they've ever known has been incredibly bloodthirsty. So they're wondering if it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, right? Renesmee is also growing very quickly. As noted, she is not acting like a 2-day-old baby, or 2-day-year-old. No, a 2-day-old baby. She's acting much older, and she's growing way faster. Okay, by the way, they're about to give her a gift, like a wedding gift, right? And Alice wants to get her changed first. So anyways, listen carefully. Yay, Alice sang. Bella, give Renesmee to Rosalie. Bella's kind of excited for this, and she's very happy that a lot of her core personalities are the same. Like, she doesn't like fashion, she doesn't like this, she doesn't like that, which is good because she didn't think she was going to get to be herself after the whole vampire change. Anyways, so we find out that the gift that they gave her and Edward, is like a cute little cottage. It's described as adorable. I want to live there. Bella, if you don't want it, I'll take it. But she loves the house, because of course she does. It's like small enough for her to like take it as an actual gift and not like be repulsed from it. And also it's a cute and quaint and like adorable, and there's enough room for her and Edward and Renesmee there, and it's really cute. But she does say this line, which is kind of horrifying, because okay, so vampires don't sleep, and this is her like fully realizing that because it's like dark outside or whatever. Anyways, it says, and I quote, "I was just thinking, today is the first and last day of forever." That's a terrifying concept when you think about it, right? The first and last day of forever. Because again, vampires don't sleep. So this concept of like an everlasting day, a day that does not end, kind of scary, right? A little scary. It's a little scary, right? Not just me. Maybe it is just me. Edward says, "We're lucky Esme thought to add an extra room. No one was planning for Renesmee." I frowned at him. My thoughts channeled down a less pleasant path. "Not you too," I complained. Everybody calls this baby Nessie. We find out that the real gift that they gave them was alone time, because they're vampires. Everything is heightened. Everything. And this is when we find out that that is the reason that Edward is such a little know-it-all, is because his nights were spent like researching stuff, because he didn't have no girlfriend. To which I wrote, when he says this, I'm such a know-it-all because of the mind reading, but the truth is that I've just had a lot of free time. I put a fucking virgin next to it, because this is basically Bella's life now, right? She's a vampire, and she's perfect at it. She is now married to Edward, which is what her dream was, and now she's got a baby. She also says that there was nothing more beautiful in the world than Edward in some khakis and a beige pullover. Which, like, okay. Maybe she needs to go out more. I think she's only ever been to Arizona and, like, Italy that one time. Girl, there's a lot of beautiful things in this world, and I can assure you, khakis and a beige pullover are not high on that list. This is where we get more horror descriptions of Renesmee, because now she's gonna be like a mom, right? Renesmee is horrifying. Her proportions are not like a child's proportions, they're like an adult proportions. She's long and slender and just terrifying. Really, this weird hybrid mix of an adult and a child mixed together. Terrible. Not okay. That's too far in the almost uncanny valley for me. That's what I'm picturing, is this weird, like, almost child, almost adult looking person. Terrifying. But her life isn't perfect yet, right? Because they're still figuring out what to do about Charlie. And this is when Jacob, like, busts down the door and is like, "Charlie's gonna be here very quickly. He followed me in his truck. He knows everything." Turns out he phased in front of Charlie. He turned into a werewolf in front of Charlie. And Charlie didn't throw up or didn't do anything weird. He was freaked out though. And Jacob explained it to him. He was like, "Listen, Bella's different now. There's a lot of things going on. It's not that, but it's related to that." He's like, shh, shut the fuck up. Shh. I don't need to know anything about that. Whatever just happened to you right there, I don't need to know. I don't want to know. All right? But you said Bella's different now. Where is she? Is she okay? And did she know all of this going in? Those are my only questions. Do not give me any more information than what I asked for. Go. So Charlie's coming over. He doesn't know anything. And they're like, oh, hold on, that's my cat. I'm back. So Charlie's coming over. He knows next to nothing except that he just saw a dude turn into a wolf, and now he's coming to see his daughter, who has been mysteriously sick for a while. They're like, okay, well, we're gonna have to get her contacts for her eyes, in which we are told that contacts are a muddy brown and that her brown was much prettier. That's what Alice says. Do with that what you will. Also, Stephenie Meyer's Batman fan, apparently, because she knows the name Dick Grayson. So that's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know, something I noticed. Because that's what they say they're gonna do, is say that Renesmee is like a family relative of Edward's, and there was a tragic incident, and so they're kind of taking care of her. And because they're married now, Bella is also taking care of her, and Stephenie describes it like Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, which again, nobody knows who Dick Grayson is. That's the first Robin. He's the first Robin, who was orphaned tragically, similar to Bruce Wayne, and then Bruce Wayne adopted him. He's from the circus. I've been on a Batman kick recently. I'm not sure if you could tell. They're like getting her the contacts. They're like, you need to move a little bit, like every once in a while. You can't sit perfectly still. Humans don't do that. We fidget, we move, whatever. Alice is like, take the baby away from her. I need to see Bella. And then somebody's like, give the baby back to her so that she doesn't tear out Charlie's throat. So then she's like, fine, give the baby back. I'll try to see around her. Like, this is inconvenient for Alice. And then we get this interaction with Edward and Renesmee, where he's talking to Renesmee, and he's like, somebody important is going to be coming over, and they're different from us. They don't know a lot about this. He's like, you can't tell him things the way you would tell us. And then he says something that I say to toddlers every single day. I work at a preschool. I'm going to tell you, we say the same line here. We're saying the same thing. He's like, but you mustn't bite him. I say that every day to toddlers. I do. That's not even a funny joke. I say that to toddlers. And then, Renesmee's thinking thoughts at Edward, and he's like, no, you can still buy Jacob. That's fine. Charlie's there. He walks in the door, and Carlisle's like kind of sort of trying to distract him. He's like, hey, Charlie, how have you been? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Carlisle? Where's my daughter? And then from the corner, Bella's like, I'm right here, Dad. Except it's her vampire voice, so it's like not right. He walks up to her, and he's like, Bella? Is that you? Horrifying. So it's not just her being like, oh, I look pretty now, I don't recognize myself. Her own father barely recognizes her now. Huh? Why does that happen? Why does your entire bone structure change when you become a vampire? What is going on? Bella describes Charlie as smelling really good. I think it's supposed to imply that he is her blood singer. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Kind of weird. Anyways, once he figures out that is in fact Bella, he's like, you've been lying to me, but I'm glad you're okay. Something moves in Bella's hair, and it's his baby. They're like, oh yeah, that's Edward's niece that Jacob told you about, Edward's niece. And he shows her Renesmee, and he's like, oh, it's nice to meet this baby, whatever. And then he kind of looks at her. And then he looks at her a little bit more, and Bella is like, fuck. Because he definitely just noticed that she has the same eyes that Bella used to have. Charlie's eyes. And then he starts hyperventilating. Jacob comes over and is like, it's need to know, Charlie. It's need to know. And he's like, I don't need to know everything. But you are not gonna lie to me. And so Edward steps in and is like, okay, you're right, I'm sorry. But that is the lie that we're gonna tell everyone else. So you need to know it. He's like, okay, fine. Edward agrees to that. And so then he's like, how old is she? Oh, she's 3 months. Kind of. In a sense of... what is age, really? And then Jacob's, like, trying to, like, talk to him and be like, it's the same as I've always been. I'm just a werewolf now. And then Charlie's like, shut the fuck up. He doesn't really want anything to do with this, and he's really tense, clearly. And then Emmett starts cheering in the back. And he's like, go Gators! Woo! Charlie's like, you got the game on over there? Is Florida winning over there? Like, what's going on? Yeah, man, come on over. Check this out. Smartest man in the room. Emmett Cullen. Is it Emmett Cullen? Is it Emmett Hale? Which ones are the Hales again? I can't remember. Emmett, smartest man in the room, okay? He calms down a lot, and then he gets to talk to Bella, and he's like, I want you to stay close, Bella, because I love you. And this is really sweet. Whenever we have moments with Charlie and Bella like this, it really does warm my heart, because you can tell he really does care about her, and like this whole situation is really messed up, and he shouldn't have to deal with it. Anyways, and he loves the baby like immediately, because every everybody loves Renesmee when they meet her. This is also when we find out that Renesmee's middle name is Carly, which at first I was like, that's cute. And then she's like, it's Carlisle and Charlie together. Girl, no. Unacceptable. Somebody needs to stop her. Where is Edward in all of this? No, don't let her make any more decisions about names. She's pissing me off. So finally, Charlie leaves, and then Bella, is like, oh, we did it. I'm so proud of myself, whatever. And then this is what she says. Wow, I whispered. I blinked and felt the third set of contact lenses disintegrate. No, oh god, I'm wearing contact lenses right now, that's not okay. So she did it, she's a great newborn. Oh, this is also when I almost threw hands with Edward, so let me read that to you. I have got to stop tapping this mic. Renesmee is like, touching Bella, and she's kind of projecting this thought of how pretty Bella is, with her pretty sparkly skin, and how her skin just had a very faint glow to it, and how she doesn't like it. And Bella's like, you're the prettiest, I assured her. I'm not sure I can agree to that, Edward said, and when I turned to answer him, the sunlight on his face stunned me into silence. I will fight Edward. Do not say, what is wrong with you? If my mom said to me, oh, you're so pretty. You're the prettiest girl in the entire world. And my father was like, I'm not sure if I could say that. And he looked at my mom all lovingly. My mom would beat his ass. Unacceptable. No, you don't do that. Your children matter most. I'm sorry. Even though, I'm an adult now, too. Especially if I was, a little girl. I'm an adult now, and my mom would still, be upset with my dad if he said something like that. But, imagine, as a small child, are you joking? Are you joking? Are you joking? Is this a joke? Because it's not the time for a fucking joke. Bella says this goes on for 3 months as a newborn vampire, and her life is pretty great. She spends time with Renesmee during the day, and then at night when Renesmee is sleeping, her and Edward spend time together. It's pretty much perfect. And she mentions this concept of her being born to be a vampire, because she's just so good at it, guys. This is also when we learn that Renesmee can eat human food, but she doesn't prefer it. She can also have animal blood, but she doesn't like it. She thinks the donated blood is just fine. It's completely ethical, guys. They gave the blood up. I don't know why we're not all drinking that. Again, very funny. I think this is hilarious that the colon baby is not a vegetarian, does not want to be a vegetarian, has no interest in it, and would rather just eat humans. And then we also figure out this terrifying concept that the rest of the family has kind of already put together, because Carlisle is measuring her daily, and her growth is slightly slowing. However, at the rate she's going, she's going to be dead in 15 years. She's going to be an old lady in 15 years. And they're really, really concerned about that. So there's that. They also get a note from what are they called? The Volturi. They get a note from the Volturi oh, I'm so excited to meet the new Mrs. Cullen. Threatening threatening I'm going to eat you threatening. He sends her a pretty necklace or something. She doesn't like it. It's way too much, but whatever. And they're okay, she's going to have to visit the Volturi soon. Except nobody can know about Renesmee. So she's going to have to go by herself because they can't hear her thoughts. They get the trip all booked, and then they're okay, Renesmee, let's go hunting outside. And like I said, Renesmee doesn't like animal blood. She prefers real human blood. So she's going hunting with Jacob and Bella. As Bella lets them go out a little further and go play or whatever, she catches in the corner of her eye. Who was it again? It's somebody. Hold on. Irina. Then it is very clear that Irina sees Renesmee and books it. Uh-oh. She comes home and tells everybody, and she grabs Renesmee immediately and is let's go home. And Renesmee's very happy about that because she doesn't want to drink animal blood. She would like to drink human blood. Thank you. And this is when I'm going to split up the book again, because what happens next is they're all kind of worried and what did Irina see? We really need to talk to her, and why she ran away. That doesn't make any sense. When Alice is tidying things, and she's holding a vase in her hands, and it slips, lands on the floor, and it shatters. And everybody they're just kind of staring at her. And Bella thinks it's a joke, because she's I would have gone and caught it if I didn't think she was gonna get it. Why didn't she catch it? And she's just standing there, frozen. And then Edward gasps, and he's now everybody's freaking out, and they're what is going on, Alice? What is going on? And together, Edward and Alice speak in in unison. In unison, they speak in unison. They're like, they're coming for us. All of them are coming for us. This is when Bella kind of remembers a dream that she had about this, because, by the way, Bella has prophetic dreams. Move on with your life. The Volturi are coming for us. And that's where I'm going to end this part of the summary. We're going to be back in a little bit to finish up the last little portion of the book. But, you know, just to summarize, basically, Bella is a perfect vampire. She's got a cute new daughter who's, like, a little scary, but she loves her, so, like, that's fine. That's the third part of the book. And the Volturi are coming for them because somebody saw a little baby vampire, and that's not okay. I'm gonna go ahead and take all this out now, and we're gonna go back to regular Kaylee. But I figured I would do a cute little Bella Swan moment because she's a vampire now. So I figured, you know what, let's celebrate that. I'd let YouTube see the official Bella wig, the brand new one I got. It's a little old at this point, but I figured, you know, why not? So I'm gonna go back to regular Kaylee. I hope you guys don't mind. I will be back for the fourth part of the book. My microphone wasn't on. You didn't hear any of that. Okay, let's wrap this up. We're on to the final part. Now, I did put a little thing in here, and you might be like, oh my god, why did you break it up again? I'll explain when we get to it, but right now we're gonna go ahead and we are gonna read the final part of Breaking Dawn, the final book of the Twilight series. They're like, okay, the Volturi are coming for us. What we need are witnesses to be able to point at Renesmee and be like, that is not an immortal child. That is not a child that has been turned into a vampire. Rather, she was born like this. She's half human. She's got it in her DNA. They start listing all the names of all the people that they can call to bear witness. That's what they call it, to bear witness to this. And Alice and Jasper are like, okay, well, these people need to go here to go get some people. We need to call these people. And then Alice and Jasper bail on them. They leave. Seemingly out of nowhere. Nobody knows why, except the general consensus is they chose not to die for them, and that maybe Alice saw something that meant it wasn't gonna go okay. However, Bella catches a scent, I guess, or whatever, towards their cottage, towards her house. And so she goes in there and she digs through her books and she finds a note left to her from Alice, basically with the name of some dude on it. And Bella realizes very quickly, because on the note it's like, destroy this. That's what it says. Because Bella, again, is the only person in the entire world who can lie to Edward, which is such an interesting concept that is never fucking developed. People are now coming to bear witness to them. They get some of their friends. I'm not going to list everybody, frankly, because I'm not really interested in them. Like, at all, so I don't remember their names. We kind of know vaguely of some of them, but this is the first time we're meeting a lot of them. This is also where one of the vampires calls Bella a shield. This is what we figure out her power is, which we could have guessed. I mean, just from the name, you guess already what that is. She can block her mind from people, and that includes Hurdy power people. So she starts training with one of them. Her name is Kate. She has a similar power to Jane's, which is basically just Hurdy powers, and so she starts training with her. I do have to give this to Stephanie. This has been set up since book 1. Bella's immune to this. She really did her due diligence here. I think I mentioned this one time where I was like, I wish there was another human who had like powers that would have developed more if they became a vampire. So Alice was like a little bit psychic before she became a vampire, and then it was amplified. That's basically what these powers are in the first place. And I remember I said something like, I wish there was another human who we see have this ability. And I totally forgot that there is another human who we see have this ability. It's Charlie. According to Edward in another book, he always thought Charlie was like a little dim-witted because his thoughts were like slow and not super clear, and there wasn't a lot of them. But after he met Bella, he was like, oh, maybe I just can't fully get a grasp of his thoughts, which is implying, of course, that not only is this power somehow hereditary, but also that if Charlie was to be turned into a vampire, he would be a shield as well, the same way Bella is. Hers is just more powerful. So yes, it was set up really, really well, and that's something I wanted to touch on because I remembered suddenly. They're having more people come over. Jacob is also kind of there. Some of the werewolves are too, and this is described really in a racist way. I'll read it to you. They treated him the way people who are not animal lovers treat the pets of their friends. Jacob is a person. You need to stop comparing him to animals. I understand that he's half wolf. Still not okay. And that's not the only bit of racism, because we meet some people who are from Egypt. Though the Egyptians all looked so alike, with their midnight hair and olive tone pallor, that they easily could have passed for a biological family. Y'all heard that, right? That wasn't just me. You got, okay, cool. Also, this proves the fact that Stephanie has gone on record, it's in another book, we've all heard it, that apparently vampirism kills all the melanin in your skin for some reason, which is really weird when she says that it describes it, that it makes them perfect, and then says it also makes them white. That's racist, Stephanie. This is proof that that was the idea all along, because she describes these Egyptian people as having an olive tone pallor. Pallor is, I don't think, ever been used to describe somebody who has a dark skin tone or is even tan. I think that's always meant in white. Let me double check. Pallor. Yeah, an unhealthy pale appearance. Lack of color, whiteness, colorlessness. Yeah, okay, so I'm right. So when she describes something as them having a pallor to them, that means pale. That means they're white. They just have an olive tone to their white, which means like a little bit of green or a yellow undertone, which does prove that that was her concept all along, that being a vampire makes them white, which is super racist. She also describes them as long, as though they've been stretched. That, I can't tell you any reason is racist, but it just kind of feels like it is. Like, I feel like if nothing else in this book, those racist overtones, then, like, I would have let this go by. If the rest of the racism wasn't there, I would have been like, okay, that's a little weird, but, you know, whatever. But because the rest of that is there, I'm like, nah, something's up, something's up. She also calls them wild multiple times. She's describing their eccentric clothes, which is just like animal hide. And she's like, that made them seem wild. But everything about them, from the restless crimson eyes to their sudden darting movements. I've never met any vampires less civilized. I thought it was bad with Jacob. I thought that was the bad racism. It's everywhere. Like, how did this get published? This is, like, unacceptable. Lots of racism here, okay? Bella starts training, like, for realsies this time, and she's actually training to fight and train her powers. This is when Edward is a little baby, by the way, and he's like, I can't do it. I can't fight you like I'm trying to kill you. And it's like, you're gonna get her murdered. This is a life or death situation. She needs to know how to do these things. Like, you're causing problems right now. Sorry, I have a little sticky note of things I wanted to talk. I could, like, stick it right there, but then I couldn't read it. So it's gotta stay right here. So Bella starts training, and she also starts looking into the note that Alice left her, which is to some dude, some lawyer guy, who is, like, a little shady. And eventually she puts together that he's gonna provide her with fake IDs. And she chooses Renesmee and Jacob to have fake IDs, because she figures her and Edward are going to fight to the death. And if things go really, really south, she's going to have Jacob take Renesmee and book it. This is when, I believe, we get the first black person in Twilight. And it stood out to me because it was the first black person in Twilight. So she's describing a man who's reading a paper. His crinkly black hair was tangled and wild, but his dark skin was smooth and perfect, and his teeth were white and straight. A contradiction. I don't love that description, by the way, especially describing his hair as messy. That's a microaggression, Bella. You really need to fix your nonsense, Bella. You might be confused about this, especially if you've only seen the movies, because Laurent was black. In the book, he is not. He's white. He's described as white. Weird, right? Because not only is this the first time we get a mention of a straight up just black individual, Bella gets to flirt with him a little bit too, which is kind of funny because she's all pretty now. But then she gets to meet the lawyer guy who is white to get the fake IDs, is talking about why she's in this, like, place to meet him. And as she's talking to him, he's like, well, this is my, like, shadier residence. I have, like, one for actual businessmen to go through, and then this is the one for, like, normal people to go through. And Bella says, and I quote, I just nodded. I wasn't sure why Alice had given me the ghetto address. This is, like, let me see, how many pages is this? 10 pages after we get the first mention of a black individual. Bella immediately calls the neighborhood ghetto. Any other word, poor, shady, criminal-like, thug enthusiasm, any other word would have been fine. Would have been weird, but it would have been fine. Anyway, so Bella's racist, and so Stephanie. She gets the fake IDs made, and this is also when we learn that Jacob has given Renesmee a Quilliot promise ring, which is like a braided bracelet. Weird. Do you know what a promise ring is, Stephanie? That is really weird. That's really fucking weird. She's really weird. As we get to the end of this book, she has, like, moments of, like, interesting concepts and stuff, and then she ruins it by being a weirdo and racist. And it's like, We get this heartfelt note that Bella writes for Renesmee and Jacob, basically being like, you know, after this is all over, I want you to go to Charlie and tell him everything and tell him that I loved him, and she hopes that Renesmee will be happy that without her. Like, it's really heart-wrenching because she's planning on dying, and then, like, right after all the racism and all the weirdness. Like, it's like, I can't keep bouncing around like this, Stephanie. Jesus. Oh, also, Bella says this. She's meeting up with the lawyer guy again to get the fake IDs finally. It takes like a week to get them done, which feels really quick, but whatever. I was also surprised that that's what Alice sent her for. I thought it was going to be for something completely different, like something interesting, that there was a reason. Like, I guess the reason Edward can't know about it is so Arrow doesn't know about it, but like, I thought it was going to be something related to Renesmee, not just getting her out of Dodge, but like what she is. She says this while she's meeting him because she makes people nervous now. And she says, and I quote, "I still wasn't used to being beautiful to everyone rather than just Edward." Every boy at school had a crush on her. There was Mike, there was Tyler, there was Jacob, there was Edward. Everybody was in love with this girl. What are you talking about? Finally, they think it's about to go down right about now. It's officially like time to fight the Volturi. Alice said something about the snow sticking to the ground, so they were kind of waiting on that, and eventually it starts to stick, and they know, okay, now's the time. The Volturi are coming, they have scouts out, and they see the group coming. It's important to note that the Volturi brought everybody, including the Volturi wives. They're the wives of the main guys. They're like veiled and never go anywhere. We learn nothing else about them. So, like, okay, I don't know what that's supposed to fucking mean, but whatever. And that's what this bookmark here is for, because this is where all the action of the book is. Here, we're on page 681. This book is 750-ish pages long. In the last 60 pages, we get everything all at once, like normal, Stephanie. You know how exhausting it is to read these books? That's why it takes me so long, guys. Because I have to sit through this to get to this. And there's, like, interesting parts in this part, sure, but also, like, really, really, really. Stephanie writes a romance between some of the little vampire witnesses. She writes a little romance there. She's a little romance girly. She cannot help herself. Okay, so first, we have Edward as kind of Carlisle's strategist, almost, because Carlisle looks to him and is like, do I talk now or do I wait? And it's Edward who makes that decision, which is something I find really interesting in this, like, dynamic that the two of them have. Carlisle is essentially like the main man. He's in charge, but he looks to Edward very often in the same way he looks to Alice. So it's like a second in command thing. I thought it was interesting. So he goes to go talk and be like, so basically that baby is not an immortal baby. It's all fine and good and you should leave us alone, please. This is when we get Bella's shield finally working for the first time. It takes her being incredibly angry for it to just work perfectly, conveniently right when she needs it to. Remember when I said Stephanie is bad at dramatic tension? Like, okay, it works perfectly, great. Edward goes up and he lets Arrow, like, touch him or whatever, and he's like, oh, I see. Now I would like to speak to the baby. So Bella's pissed about that, and she takes Jacob and Emmett up with her, because Jacob is, like, you know, willing to die for, is imprinted, whatever. Emmett, because he's willing to throw down. Renesmee, you know, touches little Arrow's face like this, the same way he does to people, and he's like, oh, I see. Arrow's like, okay, it's not an immortal child, I saw it. And then when the other two start fighting with him, he's like, use your ears, stupid. There's a heartbeat. She's not an immortal child. So one of them starts freaking out and is like, I used to tumble with the children of the moon, the werewolves, back in the day. I don't trust them. The fact that they have an army of them means that they're not trustworthy. We should get rid of them anyways, even if their baby isn't an immortal child. Edward's like, they're not werewolves.
What?
Yeah, no, they're out in the daytime. The sun's up. They're not werewolves.
What?
Yeah, it's hereditary, not infectious like usual werewolf bites are. They have to infect each other through bite. It's not hereditary. This is hereditary.
What the fuck?
Bella turns to Jacob like, did you know about this? And he's like, meh. Somebody needs to give me a plane to Stephanie Meyer. I need to fist fight her, actually, in a hand-to-hand combat. Oh, and then, sorry, I'm stumbling all over the place, because this line is important to me, and I need to know more, Stephanie. Explain yourself. Arrow says something. He's like, careful, Cassius. Specious allegations get us nowhere. Species? As in plural? As in, how many other species are there?
How many other species are there?
because there's werewolves, and then there's these guys, and then there's vampires. But Arrow didn't know about these guys, neither did Cassius. So this instance of speciesist means that there's more. How many are there? How many species? Answer quickly, Stephanie. Answer quickly, Stephanie. How many species are there?
I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her.
Anyways, so they're like, okay, well, our allegations were false. It's not an immortal child. And so they kind of have to pause. And then they kill Irina for, like, being wrong. And this freaks out a lot of the witnesses on their side, because they also brought witnesses. And this freaks them all out, because it's like, what had her crime been? Being wrong? So sorry. But then Arrow is like, well, maybe this isn't an immortal child. And this witness can attest to it. He calls up one of the witnesses. And he's like, and this witness can attest to this. However, I do have to ask the question, this is something we've never seen before. This is something we have no precedent for. How do we know that she won't be dangerous in the future? I'm fine. How do we know we shouldn't just kill her now? Witness, would you say that she's going to be completely safe in the next 50 years? Are you willing to have that on your conscience? Very good manipulation on Arrow's part. It is also very well written, because the question he's asking, like, obviously it's very unfair, but from a bunch of vampires' perspective, is it really? This is something that's going to affect all of them, their whole lives. This could completely change the dynamic of the world for them, right? Like, they cannot be known about, or else it would ruin everything. So it's convincing enough for the witnesses that are there. It's very well written. Stephanie did a good job on this. Usually I'd be worried about my voice, but I've been working at a preschool, as I mentioned multiple times, which means that my vocal cords are stronger than God. So then he's like, so no laws have been broken, but how do we know we shouldn't punish them just in case? And then this one dude, Garrett? Is it Garrett? Hold on. Yeah, Garrett. Basically, Garrett has this whole speech about how, like, they're here to kill us. They're here to kill these people who live differently from them because they pose a threat to the Volturi. And he has this whole speech about it. It's actually a really good speech. I'll read some of it. I might cut out some of this. I'm just going to read all of the parts that I found interesting. He says, there is no aggression here like we all saw in the large southern clans that grew and diminished so quickly in their wild feuds. But some of us wondered if Carlisle having truth on his side would be enough to stop this so-called justice. Are the Volturi here to protect the safety of our secrecy or to protect their own power? Did they come to destroy an illegal creation or a way of life? Could they be satisfied when the danger turned out to be no more than a misunderstanding? Or would they push the issue without the excuse of justice? And then he turns to the witnesses and he says, who rules you, nomads? Do you answer to somebody's will besides your own? Are you free to choose your path, or will the Volturi decide how you will live? I came to witness. I stay to fight. The Volturi care nothing for the death of the child. They seek the death of our free will. We will defend our freedom. You will or will not attack it. Choose now and let the witnesses see the true issue being debated here. We may all be destroyed, he shrugged. But then again, maybe not. Perhaps we are on more equal footing than they know. Perhaps the Volturi have finally met their match. I promise you this, though. If we fall, so do you. And then Arrow says, very pretty speech, my revolutionary friend. Garrett remained poised for an attack. Revolutionary, he growled. Who am I revolting against, might I ask? Are you my king? Do you wish me to call you master too, like your sycophantic guard? It's actually a really good speech. The line, I promise you this, though, if we fall, so do you, really reminds me of the Hunger Games when she's like, if we burn, you burn with us. So this, like, speech that he gives, it's actually really good. I liked it a lot. And then we find out he's a patriot, like he was, so I'm assuming, like, the start of America, which isn't bad. I'm gonna let it slide. I have 2 sticky notes. We're on to the next one. The Volturi are like, well, we have to discuss this. And while that's happening, basically the fight is on. So Bella gets her shield already. Some of the people who only there to witness for the Cullens and aren't there to fight, they book it. She also turns to Jacob and is like, all right, in Renesmee's bag are identities for you both. Get out of here. Edward and Jacob are really shocked by this. They had no idea this was coming. And she's like, I'm so sorry, Renesmee. I love you. Get out. Bye. Leave. Oh. Also, Edward calls Jacob his son. That's weird. I feel weird. She's like, okay, wait till we're totally wait till everybody's distracted and then Jacob book it. And they're like, huh? And she turns to Renesmee and she's like, remember what I told you? Mommy loves you. Everything that you needed is in your bag. Bye. Basically, forever. So the fight is really interesting. Jane, Hurdy Power Lady, starts throwing Hurdy Powers at them. But it doesn't work because Bella's got her shield. To the point where, like, Edward goes to warn Carlisle. He's like, Jane, but he doesn't feel anything because Bella's already on top of it. And Jane is freaked out by this, by the way. Apparently there's also another, I think her twin or something. I don't know. His power is this, like, fog that makes people not fight. Question mark. So that comes rolling at them pretty slowly. Well, at first she doesn't realize he's doing anything because he does this. And then nothing happens, and she's like, is he doing it? What's going on? And Edward's like, he's doing it. It just takes a moment. And then this fog rolls in. Well, she describes it as, like, feeling numb to her against her shield. It's supposed to make them, like, not do anything. Essentially, it makes them not want to fight. I don't know. Also, there is an avatar on the vampire team. He's, like, controlling the wind and the water and the earth and stuff and fire. Nobody ever says why this is possible. All of the other vampires' powers are very mental in concept. His isn't. So he's trying to blow the mist away. It doesn't do anything. So then he creates this big old gorge or whatever. And they're buddies, the Avatar and Bella are, because they've got weird special powers and they are the weird special people that everybody looks at all the time. So they're pals. So all of their witnesses who are staying to fight start discussing their powers and how they're going to do everything to, you know, make this work. The Volturi are deciding. One of them is like, no. One of them's like, yes. And then Arrow ends up being the deciding vote when all of a sudden, and I'm going to read this verbatim, suddenly Edward stiffened at my side. Yes, he hissed. And he calls for Arrow. And he's like, can I clarify something first before you get through all of this? Arrow's like, sure, buddy pal, go ahead. Feel free. Ask any question you want to ask. And Edward's like, the danger you foresee from my daughter, this stems entirely from our inability to guess how she will develop. That is the reason? Like, yeah, that's the reason. Like, so if we could know for sure what's going to happen, then there'd be no reason for this vote at all. There'd be no reason for any of this, right? Well, if we were absolutely sure, then yeah, we would part in peace. Good friends, once again, Edward asked with a hint of irony. Hero says, of course, young friend. Nothing would please me more. And he says, then I do have something more to offer. Arrow's eyes narrowed. She is absolutely unique. Her future can only be guessed at. Not absolutely unique. Edward disagreed. Rare, certainly, but not one of a kind. You know, Bella starts to feel hope, but then she feels something hitting her. Arrow, would you ask Jane to stop attacking my wife? Edward asked courteously. We're still discussing evidence. So Arrow says, stop it. And then Edward says, why don't you join us, Alice? Edward called loudly. Everyone screams Alice. Even Arrow says, Alice. Arrow breathed. Then Alice dances into the clearing, and with her is not only Jasper, but somebody else, two somebodies. This is also Alice and Jasper and stuff. They cross the border that Bella has made, which is very obvious because of the fog that stopped there. So all of the people who are willing to fight are like, oh, it's only mental attacks. We can still get this bitch. Edward's like, okay, Alice, time to tell us why you're here. Go ahead. One of the guys is like, the time for witnesses is over, but Arrow is like, no, go ahead. And Alice steps forward lightly and introduces the strangers. This is Julian and her nephew, Nahul, and everybody freezes. The vampire world was changing and everyone could feel it. That's the line she uses. It's really good. Julian? I'm saying that wrong. He basically gives this story about her pale sister, who was so much more beautiful than everybody. Stephanie, goddammit! Really caught the attention of this weird monster guy, and she ended up getting pregnant from it. This child was killing her, just like it did with Bella, but instead of like Bella, it actually killed her. So the sister takes care of it, but then the baby bites her, and she becomes that same similar monster, but she raises the baby as her own because her sister loved it so much. She says that she cared for him until he was able to hunt for himself. We hunted the villagers around our forest, staying to ourselves. We have never come so far from our home, but Nahul wished to see the child here. She bows her head and she walks back. They stare at the young man. They say, Nahul, you are 150 years old, he questioned. Give or take, he answered in a clear, beautifully warm voice. His accent was barely noticeable. That feels racist. We don't keep track. And you reached maturity at what age? About 7 years after my birth, more or less. I was full grown. Stephanie, that's weird. They ask, you haven't changed since? And he says, not that I've noticed. And your diet. Arrow asks. He says, mostly blood, some human food. I can survive on either. Don't mind. They ask, you were able to create an immortal. He's like, yeah, but the rest of us can't. The rest of you? It turns out that he has sisters as well. Apparently, his father is like making a kind of like an army, a clan, whatever, the little vampire communities of his own children. And this is when we find out he had 2 daughters but no sons. He expected me to join him as my sisters had. He was surprised I was not alone. My sisters are not venomous, but whether that's due to gender or a random chance, who knows? I don't know why everything is so gendered in Stephanie's world. So Nahul comes in and he's like, guess what? Not only is she not the only half vampire hybrid around, I'm not the only vampire hybrid around. There's more. Arrow admits. He's like, there's no danger here. And they have to leave. 2 of the vampires who were bearing witness were really rearing for a fight, by the way. They hate the Volturi. They didn't even care about Renesmee at all. They didn't care if she was an immortal child or not. They were like, no, we just don't like these fools. We're willing to fight. So when it disappears, they're like, oh, next time, I guess. Now we're reaching officially the end of the book. We learn that Renesmee isn't the only one. Nahul is really invested in Bella, by the way, because his mother obviously died, and he kind of felt really guilty about that his whole life. But it turns out that he's not necessarily a monster because his mama died. It was just an unfortunate series of events, and perhaps if she had gotten venom in her system, she would have been just fine. At the very end of the book, Bella takes down her shield for the very first time. She finally figured out how to do it, and she lets Edward read her thoughts, and he is so enamored by this that he ends up making out with her and snaps her shield back in place, and he's like, make it come back, and she's like, I gotta focus, man. It's very cute. I would say, it's like a cute little way to end the book with Edward and Bella, and that is the end. They spend the rest of their lives with Renesmee. In theory, they also have a talk about Jacob and Nahul both possibly being interested in Renesmee, which is really gross and really groomy and not okay. Which really ruins the end of this book, because it was like kind of a cute ending, and then that gets brought up, and then she tries to bring it back to it being cute, and it's like not. It's like weird, and like somebody needs to call CPS. That was Breaking Dawn. We finished it. Are you ready for this sound? That's too big. I'm gonna do my concluding thoughts, and yeah, we're gonna finish this up. I'm so excited. I've never been more excited in my life to finish something, man. It may feel weird that there was a cut there, but I'm trying to make this easier for me to edit, so I'm filming in segments. I'm back from like literally 2 seconds ago at where I watch at work. Let's go ahead and wrap up our thoughts on Breaking Dawn as a whole. I gotta say, definitely an ending to the series. I think that can be something that writers struggle with a lot, is ending the book, putting the characters in a place where we feel comfortable leaving them alone, and Stephanie did it. I feel completely content with the end of this book. There's some things that I'm like, oh, I wonder what happens next. Of course, that's true of every story. But do you want to come up here? Do you want to come here? I'll give you pets. You just want to lay there? Okay. I'm talking to my cat. I'm sorry. There's nothing that I'm like, do you want to come up? Yeah. There he is. Say hi. Look. Oh, no, you can barely see. He's the same color as me. Hold on. There we go. You get to see his little face. Okay, anyways. No, it's a good ending to the book. All the characters are really wrapped up. We can kind of guess where they're going next. All that's to say, she genuinely wrapped up the book really well. You guys are only going to be focusing on my cat. I'm going to zoom in on my cat while I'm talking. Nobody cares what I'm saying. Look at him. Look at your little face. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to say? Do you want to say anything into the microphone? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, don't leave me. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. So I am really impressed with the fact that she managed to write this. It feels like a complete story. The stakes were actually pretty high. I was very impressed by that, especially because in the first book, it's like Bella's in love with the vampire, and that's scary for her, but it doesn't feel world-ending, whereas this was like a world-ending war that could have broken out. That was, very interesting to have done that, especially because, like, she didn't have to. It very well could have just been like, and, she didn't get eaten by a vampire at the end. So, that's interesting. As far as the book itself goes, a lot of racism in this one. I'd say probably the most amount of racism we've seen in the Twilight series as a whole is in Breaking Dawn itself, which to me is fascinating because, like, was nobody mentioning the racism that was already present? I mean, I know it was the early 2000s, but guys, like, come on, right? There's cat hair everywhere. I'm sorry, I'll pet you in a second. God, he's wagging his tail at me. Way more racism than any other book. And a lot of it is very overt. Like I was saying before that they're not undertones, these are overtones in the racism. This is like just straight up being like just racist. I don't know what to do about all that. Oh, did you get too hot? Okay, bye, love you. There's cat hair everywhere. You want out? Do you want out? Okay. Also, a lot more weird gender stuff. I don't get this. I don't get it. I don't get it. Maybe that's because I'm normal. So maybe somebody crazy can explain it to me. I don't know why Leia had to be infertile or not get her periods and be the only female werewolf fucking ever. What about being a werewolf is inherently a man thing? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. What about turning somebody into an immortal vampire is like inherently a man thing? That doesn't make any sense. Like, in actual biology, when something is only evident in one of the sexes of a species, it makes sense. There's at least some sort of reasoning for it. Nothing here. So that was upsetting and weird. On that note, I thought the wedding was really cute. I thought we got a lot of cute moments between Edward and Bella. And you know, I have to say, I think Edward and Bella's love story is actually kind of sweet. I'll say it. You know what? Controversial. I'll say it. They're cute. Fucking crucify me. I don't know. Do you want out? You know, the fact of the matter is, Jesus Christ. The fact of the matter is, they do really care about each other. Yeah, Bella got her happy ending. They get to live together forever and ever and ever. They get to have a kid together. Like, it's sweet. It's sweet. It's sweet. Speaking of them being parents, on my TikTok, I mentioned a little something that I wanted you guys to nibble on, to think about while I was actually making this video, and that was my opinion on Bella's parenting, which is controversial. And my opinion is that she isn't a bad parent. By the way, for anybody who's curious, I did finish Breaking Dawn, okay? And I promise I'm gonna make a video about it. I'm working right now and I'm trying to do school at the same time, and I'm failing at both, so I need to get my life together. But when I do, I will make an edit that video. I pinky promise made. But I want to give you guys some nibble on. So one of my little thoughts, just like a little crumb of my thoughts before I give you a meal. And I want you to nibble on it. I want you to savor it. I want you to think about it. And that's, my thought is that Bella isn't a bad mom. That's a controversial take on here. I know it is. I follow people who disagree with that vehemently, and like, that's totally cool. We're gonna different. It's fine. It's fine. But I don't think she's that parent. At least not from what I read and how I interpreted it. I don't think she's that parent. I think she's unconventional. I think the Cullens are parenting Renesmee in an unconventional way. But I don't think she's that parent. Like, to be fair, yes, did she forget about Renesmee when she first got turned into a vampire? Yes, she did. But also she just got turned into an immortal creature. I'm gonna give her a pass. I'm gonna give her a pass. You might not want to. I'll give it to her. I'm giving her a pass. And she's also doing all her nonsense with Edward. Okay, she always is. But to be fair, she does say they relegate that to when Renesmee is asleep, that she does all her nonsense with Edward. So she does try to be active with Renesmee in the daytime when she's awake. And somebody might point out that a lot of the time, a lot of the other Cullens, or Jacob even, will be watching Renesmee. And it's like, yeah, but I think that's unconventional and not bad parenting. I think it's supposed to read more as like a village raising a child rather than a typical nuclear family, rather than bad parenting. At least that's how I read it. I agree with a lot of people who say she would have been a weird boy mom if it had been little Edward Jacob instead of Renesmee. But saying that, I don't think she's a bad parent to Renesmee. I think it's very clear in the book that she does really care for her and like loves her as a daughter or whatever. So again, you know, I think a lot of people will say like she doesn't give Renesmee attention. I already talked about that. But another thing will be like they don't think she loves Renesmee as much as she loves Edward. And I will say that sometimes her infatuation with Edward does come at odds with how she's parenting Renesmee. I'll say that for sure. But also, like, she is fully willing to let Edward die for her baby. So, like, on that note, like, there is that at the very least. Like, I don't think that would have happened earlier in the books for sure. Anyways, that's my little treat for you. Here you go. Here's your little treat. Hey, until the video comes out. Here you go. This is controversial because I read the situation as a unique parenting, a unique family unit, rather than Bella being a bad parent, which I think a lot of people read it as Bella being a bad parent. I read it more like a village raising a child rather than our typical nuclear family that we're all used to. So Rosaline and Esme and Jacob do a lot of childcare for Renesmee, but Bella and Edward aren't doing nothing. They're still very helpful in this instance. Obviously, Renesmee sleeps at their house. They take care of her there. It's just more like everybody has a job to do with the baby, rather than it just being Bella's job. And she also clearly does adore Renesmee. People always talk about how they think Bella will get bored of Renesmee very quickly. I don't think so. I do think that she actually really does adore Renesmee and is willing to do a lot for her. So I will say that I think her infatuation with Edward does sometimes come into conflict with her mothering abilities, which is what I think a lot of people are picking up on when they say that she's a bad mother. You're not supposed to do that. Your spouses are not supposed to come before your children. And that's where a lot of my criticism comes from in regards to Bella. But I will say Edward does it more, I think. So I don't know. I think it's something they both need to work on. But I don't think it automatically makes them bad parents. I think it gives them bad tendencies. That's something that they would have to work on to get better at parenting. So there's that. I'm also a little, not upset, but the Volturi are still in power. So the status quo hasn't really changed in the vampire world, except for the fact that there's maybe a little bit more doubt instilled in the Volturi. And that's kind of a bummer bummer that everything is like just the same. That's just a bummer. Not much else to say. I mentioned earlier that I thought Leia would be a better love interest for Jacob rather than a literal baby, and I stand by that. I think that would have been way more interesting and way more intriguing to read about, is him genuinely moving on with his life and falling in love with Leia and still choosing to stay by Bella's side because she's his best friend. Having him genuinely care about Renesmee and earning that rather than it being forced upon him would have been a much more interesting read and would have done so much more for his character, man. I'm really tired. I started filming this, like literally, I ate something right after I got off from work, and like I ate dinner, and now I'm here filming and I'm tired. I've been filming for like a while already. Yeah, it has to have been like 3-ish hours, I think. I'm on like hour 4. So, excuse me if I'm not fully coherent, but I want to get this video done because I'm tired of Twilight. I genuinely do think having Jacob's perspective in here made me like him more, which surprised me because I genuinely thought it was going to make me dislike him more because, like I said, I've said this multiple times, Stephanie doesn't like Jacob and she makes me hate him because she doesn't like him. But seeing how, like, adamant he is about, like, how he's not going to use the alpha voice, or even, like, how much he advocates for Leah, even though he's not. He's like rude to her. He's an asshole to her. But ultimately, he's nicer to her than any other werewolf. So comparatively, he does a lot better. And seeing him grow closer with like Rosalie or Alice is also really cool. Seeing that growth in perspective, especially from his perspective, is very interesting. And seeing him and Edward become like pals, which is what I've been hoping for since book fucking 1, was like a delight. I was so happy to finally get to read that. So happy. It is interesting that Bella's human friends are never mentioned again, but she does describe her human memories as being very murky. So Jacob and Charlie are the only connections she really has to her human years besides Edward, which is fascinating because she's almost like knows she's supposed to love Edward, but can't quite remember specific moments and stuff. That's a little horrifying. That's a little 51st Dates terror horror movie, actually. That concept is fascinating to me because ultimately, what we get a lot in immortal vampire media is the reason those early memories fade isn't because you're suddenly a different being now, you're supernatural now. Rather, it's because you end up living so many years that you just kind of forget about the first part. The same way, like, if you asked me what I remembered about being 3 years old, I'd be like, nothing. But stuff that happened to me in recent years, I do remember very well. That's just how memories work. She does it very differently in here, in that becoming a vampire completely changes everything. So your past memories are very diluted. And this is also due to the fact that your senses at the time weren't heightened, so the memories themselves feel very dull compared to what you're experiencing now. That's an interesting concept. I think it fits better in a horror novel, though, than like a cute romance novel. It's the same when she's describing like the microparticles that she's experiencing, or the way Renesmee grows, or lots of different aspects, I think, of the vampire experience fit better in a horror novel, you know? And that would be fine to have in here because it's a vampire romance. That's one of the aspects people enjoy about reading vampire books, whether they are standalone horrors or if they dive into other genres, is the fact that that horror aspect is still there. The problem ultimately is that Stephanie really shies away from every other aspect of this. The blood, the gore, them eating other humans, the kind of gray mortality that they can have. She shies away from all of this, but because she goes so hard on this, it's like kind of weird. I don't know. It feels really disjointed and ultimately like a weird jarring experience when you're reading the book because you're really not used to it. Saying that about the vampires as well, I have to give her props for being very consistent, I guess. Having the vampires Bella first meets have powers, Edward has the mental stuff, you know, Alice, Jasper, and then having that build up into Bella herself having a vampire power, that's pretty cool. At first, they actually think that maybe her self-control, I think, is like her thing, kind of like how Rosalie's just like beautiful, or how Emmett's strong, where it's not like a thing, but it's kind of like a thing. And then they find out she's a shield, which works as her like thing, you know? Do you guys find that I'm just kind of chilling? Hopefully not. I'm like all the way in the bottom of the frame. I might have to fix this later because like all this empty space up here is not appealing. Anyway, speaking of the vampires, the powers are like interesting, I think. We know previously, like I said while I was summarizing the book, Alice and Bella have their powers before they're turned, or at least very light aspects of it, which I brought up very briefly, that Bella has prophetic dreams, and then I kind of skipped over this. And this was something that people talk about all the time, is that Bella is technically clairvoyant in a similar way as Alice, except it comes to her in dreams. Obviously, she figured out Jacob being a werewolf and Edward being a vampire through prophetic dreams, and she has a dream before she's a vampire about the Volturi coming to take something away from her. At the time, it's a baby boy, but it's a baby essentially being taken away from her from the Volturi. She actually mentions that her subconscious must have known or something like that. And that's interesting because the fact is that this skill will never fully manifest because vampires don't sleep. And so Bella will never dream again. So it's really interesting to think about, like, what does that mean, right? Yeah?
Sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt your TikTok or...
It's fine.
Can you turn it down a little bit?
Are you trying to sleep?
Yeah, I can hear you through my door just slightly.
Okay, I'll try to be a little bit quieter.
So just a little, it doesn't have to be like, be quiet, but it's like just a little bit.
Just a hair.
Just a fucking hair.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'll move my microphone a little closer. Sorry, it's kind of late. My brother's trying to sleep. I'm gonna keep that in, of him being like, can you shut the fuck up? It brings me back to this concept of multiple species that Stephanie brought up and then never did anything with, of like, where do psychics lie on that? Right? That's interesting. This is feeling way more podcasty than YouTube video-y, but yeah, whatever. I also feel the need to bring up the Avatar vampire. I think that was a bad idea. I don't know who told her to write that, or if she just thought of it. I like the character. I think he's interesting. He's like a fun guy to talk to, for sure, and get to know throughout the book, but ultimately kind of is disconnected from the rest of the lore that we have, and it doesn't fit in very well. This is the last book, so introducing something like this feels very out of place and weird. Also, he doesn't really do much for the final battle, so he could have been removed. It wouldn't have been a problem. I'm also very upset, speaking of lore, that we only learn right now at the very last book that Jacob isn't a werewolf. We learned that in like the last 50 pages. That's ridiculous. We also learn finally that venom is poisonous to werewolves. These are things that should have been introduced way earlier on in the species, or in the series, because they completely changed the way that we view these creatures. And I have to wonder if it's because Stephanie got a lot of criticism for her werewolves, which ultimately weren't very werewolfy as we know them traditionally. I talked about this a little bit in my New Moon video, where they felt more like shapeshifters than anything else. Did she try to bypass this criticism? Like, I just don't understand it. I felt like it was really out of place and generally a bad idea. I don't know why she did it. Did I have any thoughts on this book that I didn't already mention? I don't think so. Anyways, overall, I would say not the worst series I've read. So, not the worst ending to a series I've read. That has to go to the Shade of Magic series. That was the worst ending of a series I read. That was one that got progressively worse as I read it. I would say that these stayed relatively consistent. Twilight was like pretty okay. New Moon was like pretty okay. Eclipse was like pretty okay. And Breaking Dawn was like pretty okay. So, I have to say, at first I was very confused on why this got so popular. But as we reach the end of this series with us all, where I've talked about Twilight for a lot of hours, I get it. Because there's a lot to say. And even if you love these books and you think there's nothing wrong with them, there's still a lot to say. Edward and Bella and all of these characters are fucking fascinating. The lore isn't great, but what is interesting is really interesting. Stephanie's writing is ultimately very, very mid until it reaches its highs. So it feels like a roller coaster in theory, but we're going like this, and then we reach these interesting concepts, and then we go right back down to mid, which I think is great for developing a large fan base case, because if you never dive into your interesting details, your fans will. And that's what they did. A lot of people fell in love with this, even the aesthetic, which the way she writes it is very Puritan, very khakis, very white shirts and such, but can be read as a very gothic idea of this girl falling in love with a vampire. Like, that's interesting. Usually it's told with a little bit more edge to it, but I think that's also what drove a lot of people towards this, is that it's a clean cut version of that. It's the everyman's version of it, you know? You don't have to worry about the moral quandary of, like, is it ethical for this 17-year-old to date a murderer? Instead, you only have to worry about if it's ethical for this 17-year-old to date this 100-year-old. And that's less of a problem. I think I'm going to have to finish this up later, which is really unfortunate because I wanted to finish it today, but I'm starting to get really tired and I've only been filming for like 24 minutes. A lot of that has been me just staring and thinking. So I think we're gonna have to cut this part short while I think of more things to say, and also I go to bed and take a nap. Not a nap. I'm gonna take a nice 8-hour nap. I will see you guys in the morning, and hopefully I will have more things to say. I won't be cute anymore though. My makeup will be gone, so I don't want to fucking hear anything about it. I'll discuss more stuff later. This part was a little bit rambly, and maybe I'll also put a little bit of warning for that this part of the video was a little bit rambly, and that my more structured thoughts will be coming in the next part. But I kind of just wanted to just talk and see what came out. So yeah, we'll see you guys in approximately 1 second because I edit these videos. So it's gonna be like literally right now. Right now. Now I'm here to collect my thoughts and finally give my final thoughts on Twilight. I have a list of things I'm going to talk about. Let us begin. The last time I talked about this, I was all over the place. I'll be completely for honest with you. But that was like a taste of what I would be like in a podcast. Or what I'm like when I'm just talking to people, to be completely honest with you. There's a cat in my lap. Yeah, I know. Say hi. So let's start with the biggest question I think a lot of us had while we were reading Breaking Dawn, which is, of course, was Renesmee necessary? Do you get it? Because her name is... I'm very funny. Was the baby necessary for the storyline? Why was Renesmee included? What was the purpose? Did it add anything good or bad? We have to remember that ultimately this is the last book of the series, and at this point, Stephanie has not had one plot throughout the books. Ultimately, each book is a separate plot point that has some connecting pieces, but nothing that's an overarching plot. We just don't have that. The most we have is the Volturi, and even then, they're not really even mentioned in the first Twilight book. There is nothing in book 1 that really prepares you for a final book of Breaking Dawn. There's nothing in Twilight that prepares you for an overarching plot. So we end up in a predicament because of that. A predicament. We don't have an overarching plot to end the series on. The only carryover really, as far as an overarching plot from Eclipse that Breaking Dawn has to work with, is the fact that Bella and Edward are getting married. That's it. That's the only plot point left unturned. Everything else has been dealt with, which means Stephanie needs something to end this book series because a wedding just isn't going to cut it. The wedding is only like this long, okay? We need more. We need more if we're going to try and fill a whole book with something, right? She needs to figure out a way to involve the Volturi in this last little bit of the book. There's no way to do that without adding something. We need to add something, and she's already mentioned the immortal children, so we need a baby. So in the grand scheme of things, no, Renesmee herself was not necessary, but some sort of plot device was necessary to complete this book. Ultimately, do I think the addition of a baby was the best choice she could have made? No. Yes and no. We end up in this weird circumstance where, Bella never really wanted to be a mom. That wasn't really one of her big things that she wanted to do. So it feels weird. It just feels weird to have that be her ultimate destination, to just be a mother at the end of all of this, because that wasn't really something that she was focusing on. That wasn't something she was working towards. And ultimately, this is a problem with Twilight, with the first rendition of Bella, is that she wasn't really working towards anything, which is a problem. The thing she was working towards was Edward, and now she's got him. So I'm not sure how I personally would have tried to fix this. Ultimately, I think a baby is the easiest and most direct way to go about this. this. You just gotta change some of the lore that you did previously, which she does, and it's like, alright then, we have a baby now. This also kind of ties up the Jacob thing that she was having, where Jacob wasn't paired up with anybody, which is like really gross that he ends up paired up with the baby. But ultimately, it gives her a character that's kind of like Bella, but not Bella, that he can fall in love with, so that fans would be happy? Happy. I don't think any fans were happy, but it is a way to quickly wrap up his storyline of like, he's not sad about Bella anymore, guys. He's got his own thing to focus on now. Which again, not the choice I would have made. We are finally introduced to Leia in this book, and I like Leia, and I think it should have been Leia and Jacob. I think that would have been way more interesting, personally. I don't know. So that's like the biggest thought, I think, that everybody has at the end of this book is, why was it necessary to add Renesmee? And I'm saying yes and no, which isn't helpful as an answer. Fun fact, yes and no is going to be an answer to a lot of the questions that we're going to have at the end of this book. It's all nuance, baby. I think the other thing people talk about a lot in regards to this is Bella Colin, I should say, as a Mary Sue. Now, I don't like the term Mary Sue for multitudes of reasons, but mainly, you'll notice, it's a girl's name. It's Mary Sue. It's not Gary Stu. It's a Mary Sue. That's interesting to me. It bothers me a lot because it's an unfair criticism that's put on like any woman character who is good at something fairly quickly. Immediately, well, she's a Mary Sue. She's a Mary Sue. That's why she can do that, because she's a Mary Sue. It's because the author sees herself in there, and that's why it's like that. Okay, then. That feels sexist. Like, I'm just gonna come out and say it. And people have pointed this out before, that people like Luke Skywalker, Percy Jackson, even Harry Potter to an extent, all of those guys are Mary Sues in origin. They're good at things immediately. They don't have to work for anything. They're just good at things. So it makes me mad that it's called that. I'll be for real. And it makes me really hesitant to call Bella that, or call any woman character a Mary Sue, to be completely honest. Because I think the origins of the term are rather sexist. Saying that, Bella's kind of a Mary Sue. Bella is unlike any vampire ever seen before. She is not haunted by her bloodlust. She is not consumed by it. Instead, it's like a passing thought. She doesn't really even need to think about it. She's just automatically so very good at not drinking human blood. She is already so amazing at practically every aspect of being a vampire. She doesn't struggle with it at all. The only aspect of her vampirism that she struggles with is her barrier powers, her shield power. And even then, she has like a quick little, working montage with it, and she only gets like kind of good at it, and then in the heat of battle, she's suddenly an expert at it. So, it's a little Mary Sue-y. I'll admit to that. I'll say that. I don't think there's another term I can use to describe it. She's kind of a Mary Sue in that aspect. I have conflicted feelings on this. I'll say first and foremost. Obviously, it's a little bit sad because then we don't really get a lot of drama regarding this. She's just instantly amazing at it. So any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Any kind of character development that could have come from this, any sort of like suspense is immediately kind of ruined. Like, she jumps gracefully from the window, and because Emmett doesn't laugh, she knows she does actually jump gracefully. It's not just Edward being nice to her. She's not consumed by bloodlust. She can hold her half-human child and not want to eat it. She gets to talk to our dad and not want to eat him. Like, she's fine. So any interesting conflict that could have happened from that, is immediately ruined, which is, it's unfortunate. But on the other hand of things, this is like the coolest Bella has ever been ever in any of these books. The entire time, we have seen everybody in the Cullen family struggle with. We have seen every single person in the Cullen family struggle with this. Jasper, even Esme, Rosaline at the end of the book, or in the middle of the book, tries to eat the baby. Like, every single Cullen has struggled with this a lot. And Bella's just fine. She doesn't have any problems, which, is an interesting thought to have on, like, why she doesn't have any problems or what this could possibly mean. But as far as the lore of vampires goes, but everybody is very impressed with the way she's able to handle this, the way she's able to get the hang of all of this so easily. Even Arrow himself was like, you were like made to be a vampire. You were like born to do this. This is insane. Which brings up an interesting question of, was Bella born to do this? What do you mean by that? Stephanie, what do you mean by that? What about Bella? Why Bella? This is a question I had in, I think it was it New Moon or Eclipse or whatever, where I was like, why Bella? Why Bella? What's so special about Bella? What is so special about Bella that she is able to get such quick control of her vampirism in like 2 seconds? Like, she blinks her eyes open and she's perfect at it. Like, but to be fair, I do think that Stephanie has been kind of setting this up as far as plot points go, because ultimately, Bella does kind of have a lot of self-control now that, like, I'm ruminating in on it throughout the books. She's like good at that. Like she's always been like, I don't know, pretty good at taking care of herself and reining in expectations and like being able to have self-control, basically. She's very self-disciplined. So I guess maybe we could have deduced that this would be the case. Ultimately, I do think it's very surprising because it's surprising to the Cullens too. I think maybe if she had worked like a little bit at it, I don't know. I don't know if this is a problem that needs to be fixed, but it is definitely a thought that people are going to have after they read the book. I have to wonder if this is also in part due to the criticism that Stephanie got about Bella as like a weak character. You can't call her weak in this book. She's perfect at everything she does. She very quickly learns how to fight. She's like willing to do all of this, and she's willing to do all of it well. So that criticism is no longer viable for Breaking Dawn. Bella is not a weak character. She no longer is. So I wonder if that's part of the reason that was added in. I don't know. At the very least, she struggles a little bit with her barrier, her shield, mainly in taking it down for people, including Edward. She has to concentrate really hard. So, like, that's one aspect where you could say that Mary Sue-esque-ness isn't coming through. And in a lot of other ways, she does have to train for like her powers, and she does have to train to learn how to fight and stuff. So I guess in some ways it's not really there, but it definitely is to a majority of the extent, I'd say. Now, I did myself a favor. I went back and I rewatched all of my old Twilight videos that I made, and I realized that Edward was a much bigger part of the other books than he was in this one. And I know the reason for this. I'm going to tell you the reason for it. But that means that you end up with the question to yourself and to Stephanie, where did Edward go? Where is Edward? Edward? Where are you, babe? He's not here. He's on vacation still. He's still on the honeymoon. He is no longer the driving force of the plot. Unlike the last couple of books, Edward is what made the plots go. He's the only reason there was a plot in any of the books. He's the only reason there was a plot in Twilight. He's the reason that Bella gets introduced to Victoria or James or whatever. In New Moon, him leaving is the reason that Bella's sad, and him thinking that Bella is dead is the only reason why the plot continues past that, the only reason why she goes to the Volturi. In Eclipse, it's Victoria wanting to kill Edward's soulmate or whatever. So Edward, in the past 3 books, has been the main driving force in the plot, which means that because he is no longer the main driving force, he kind of disappears almost. I didn't realize until I was watching those old videos about how often I mention Edward. Edward is doing this, Edward is doing that. Even when he's not in the books, he's influencing them very heavily. In this one, he really is like a side character almost, which is interesting. That's not to say that Bella doesn't talk about him all the time or Bella's not hanging out with him all the time, because she is. But the difference is here, not only is part of the book narrated by Jacob, who does not like Edward, and like Edward's thoughts and feelings are not an important part of Jacob's choices, but also after Renesmee is born, she is the driving force of the plot. They're only doing this because of Renesmee. And so Edward kind of falls to the sidelines, which is an interesting choice ultimately. I think it was a bad one because we don't know anything about Renesmee, but I know a lot about Edward, so he really does take a sideline to this, which was interesting too because I feel like this is the most we've seen of Jacob, especially because the love triangle has concluded, right? So you'd think we'd have a heavier focus, like in Twilight, the first book, on Edward and Bella, but we really don't. It's mostly about Renesmee and Bella as a vampire, which is, kind of weird in retrospect. I wonder how that sat with fans at the time, because if you were excited to like fully get into Bella and Edward and finishing their story, like they do, but Edward's not really there. He's not really there. So that was something very interesting I noticed that I thought I'd bring up, is the fact that Edward kind of disappears from the plot. He's not as important. Now he's pretty much as important as Alice is, as Alice is. I'd say they're pretty equal, where Alice is definitely a side character. She's not one of the main characters of any of these books, but she's never really pushing the plot. She kind of aids it. She's definitely like helpful towards the plots, but she's not the one making them do plot things. Same way Edward is kind of like this in this book, where he is the Alice of this book, essentially, which was, just odd. Not a good or bad thing, just an odd thing that she did. I don't know about all that. Shall we discuss the wolves? The wolves who are not wolves. Stephanie Meyer, I hate you. How many times did I talk about the fact that they had no reasons to be natural enemies? And then only now, in the last book, in like the last chapter, is she like, well, did you know that venom is actually poisonous to wolves? Stephanie, you have 7 days. I swear to God. No, it's just, this is something that should have been brought up book 1, book 2. Stephanie. Also, another point of contention that I had was that the wolves didn't feel like werewolves. They felt like shapeshifters. Only to find out now, I was fucking right. They aren't werewolves. They're shapeshifters. Why wasn't this in book 2? That was one of my big criticisms. Hold on, I'm gonna hold this. Maybe that'll make this easier. That was one of my biggest criticisms, was that the werewolf lore kind of sucked in comparison, and that was because they aren't based off of werewolves. They're based off of the Quileute tribe's beliefs and legends that I don't want to critique too much as a story, because ultimately they're not stories. They're beliefs and legends. It's like trying to critique the Bible for like its plot development. It doesn't make any sense, right? That's not what the Bible's for. The story of the wolves isn't for being like werewolves. It's for something else completely, entirely, right? So saying all of that, finding out that they aren't werewolves, but werewolves do exist, is bothersome to me, because then it means that what I just said about them being natural enemies doesn't work anymore, because how do we know that venom is toxic to wolves? Is it toxic to wolves in general, and because they're wolves, that's why? Or is it only toxic to werewolves? In which case, they're not werewolves. So what's the big fucking deal? And then, even more so, if it does affect them, why? Why is this random tribe in the middle of America, on the west coast of America, in any way affiliated with beings that would come all the way from fucking Europe? Why? That doesn't make any sense to me, and I still hate it. And she tried to fix her lore, and she made it work. Speaking of the wolves, just the random lore of them, let's talk about Jacob in this book and in all of the books, and my final thoughts on him as a character. So Jacob in New Moon is this happy dude who is just there for like a good time. He wants to make Bella happy. He, wants to make pretty much everyone around him happy. He's like a little ball of sunshine in the body of this 6 foot dude, right? And in New Moon, he ends up turning into a werewolf, where in that point he turns into Edward. He's grumpy all the time. He's mad. His vibe changes. The vibe definitely changes from like this happy-go-lucky guy to like somebody a little bit more angry at the world, but like in a boring and mean way instead of like kind of a fun way. At least in my opinion. And this change in his character continues into Eclipse, where he's like kind of friends with Bella. He says he's friends with Bella, but then he can't stand the fact that she's with somebody else, and he's still angry all the time, and he turns everything into a competition with Edward. And so I don't find him interesting in that book either. In Breaking Dawn, we actually get his point of view of things, which is very, very interesting. But also, as I've said multiple times before, Stephanie Meyer doesn't like Jacob. So ultimately, even though we're getting this perspective of him, I find myself still struggling to find good things to say about him, because Stephanie Meyer doesn't like him. So she writes him like she doesn't like him, which is a huge, huge problem for somebody who we're supposed to think Bella has actual reasons to be in love with. She's supposed to really like this. We're supposed to have reasons that Edward starts liking Jacob. We're supposed to have reasons why they don't just murk him as soon as they find out he's in love with their baby, right? So it's difficult to find these moments because Stephanie Meyer doesn't write them, because she doesn't like Jacob. It's like this has been the problem since New Moon, okay? This has been the problem since New Moon, and it still hasn't been fixed, and we're still struggling with it, even in this last book of the series. Saying all of that, his character development in this book is actually pretty good. That might feel a little random, but it's important to note that we do get some very interesting looks into Jacob's thoughts, right? So I mentioned previously the whole alpha thing and how very against the idea of controlling someone that Jacob is. He's very against that concept. And so seeing him versus Sam in that matter makes Jacob seem very, very interesting. It kind of brings back this happy-go-lucky guy that we saw in New Moon. Somebody who wanted the best for the people around him. Somebody who cared about his friends. Somebody who was like actively trying to make himself better, right? And we get to see him do that with Seth and Leah, where he doesn't use the alpha voice on them. And I think the one time he does, or like thinks about doing it, it's because they're in real danger and they're not listening to him. All that's to say is that is an interesting deep dive into Jacob as a character, what that says about him, right? That even when he doesn't like the fact that Seth and Leia followed him, instead of controlling them to not follow him, he ultimately leaves the decision up to them instead of taking that choice away from them. That's a big part of that. That's something that he could have done and nobody would have known. I mean, Leia and Seth would have known, but nobody else would have known this about him. And he still made the good decision, the moral decision. And that is something that I find absolutely fascinating. It says a lot about him as a person, like I said. We also get to see his relationship with Bella from kind of a different perspective, and it kind of reiterates a lot of the things that I usually say about Bella and Jacob's relationship, which is that Bella doesn't care enough about him. She's supposed to. She doesn't. Because again, Stephenie Meyer doesn't like Jacob, so they don't have a good relationship. Saying that, it is clear that he really does care about her. I wish it was less competitive, and I wish it was less weird, but ultimately he does care about her. Edward, offer her your body, essentially. And Jacob is, disgusted by this, but ultimately, he does end up offering this deal to Bella because he wants to make sure she lives. That's the most important thing to him. So while it is degrading towards him, he still considers this offer and does actually end up giving the offer back to Bella. He does care about her more than anything. This is really the main reason why Edward and Jacob end up teaming up with each other and talking more, is because they're both like, now listen, we might not like each other, but if Bella dies, there's no point, right? So ultimately, we get to finally see Jacob have that devotion that I was talking about in a clip with this gothic romance that Stephenie has been writing. Edward has had this devotion, I'd say, since New Moon. Jacob is only really getting that now in this book because he's officially, he's lost, right? Edward and Bella are married. he's not gonna win. He still cares about her an insane amount, right? And so finally getting to see that aspect of him is, I think, really good, especially for this romance, especially for us to really feel that heartbreak that Jacob is feeling, that he's willing to do anything for this girl, and she chose somebody who wasn't him. I wish we got more into that type of heartbreak from him. I think overall, he's just mad, and I don't like characters that are just, angry in a violent way, you know? Sometimes I can handle it, especially if there is this tone of sadness to it, and the violence is very self-inflicted. I can better, it makes it a little easier to connect with. But when this violence is outwards, which it can happen for a lot of people, I'm not saying that's it's a bad thing because you're hurting others, but ultimately this is something very normal that humans go through. But when it happens in characters, I tend to not like it because they are being violent towards others and it makes me uncomfortable. So I wish that wasn't the case. I also wish he was nicer to Leia. I think it would have made a big, I don't know, he still could be snarky with her. I didn't have a problem with the snark that they had with each other. My biggest problem was that he was still rude to her and in a very mean way, like a cruel way almost, and I didn't like that at all, because again, it makes him look cruel. It doesn't look like he's like the rest of the wolves who all hate Leah. He looks cruel. So I think it would have done a lot to have him be nice to Leia and genuinely, treat her as a friend the same way he treats Bella, and not keep mentioning the fact that she's like a weird female werewolf who has all this emotional baggage, that's pretty rude to say to somebody who ultimately chose you over what she knew as family, over the man that she loved. She chose you over that. And so I find it, again, I think it just makes him look cruel. Saying that, ultimately, he is the one to be like, I think Leia can make her own choices when it comes to this. When Sam is like, give her back. He's like, she chose this, dude. I'm not forcing her to be here, and I'm not going to force her to go away either, because that would be messed up. So again, we see his, the character in the dark, they say, what a character chooses in the dark when nobody can see them, and nobody's going to notice, right? When nobody can judge them on a choice they make. One second. Do you know how difficult it is to have a father with ADHD who decides right now is the perfect time to start working on the floors of your house? It's pretty fucking difficult. Anyways, what was I saying? What a character does in the dark. Basically, Jacob is ultimately a good, moral, ethical person, which I think is nice to learn. Because, for instance, with, Carlisle, he steals Jacob's blood in the middle of the night. He, goes up, he just, takes his blood from him. He just steals it. He also steals, blood bags from the hospital he works at. That's, pretty morally bad. So for a character in the dark, Carlisle makes a lot of unethical, unmoral decisions, unlike Jacob, who is making the correct decision, if you will. Now, with all of that, then he imprints on Renesmee, and after he imprints on Renesmee, he's much calmer, which is a plus in such a terrible, terrible thing that she did. There is one upside, which is that he is no longer as outwardly angry onto others as he has been, which is way better than what was happening beforehand. Saying that, dear God, why did she do that to him? Dear God, dear God. He gets along with the rest of the vampires pretty easily after that, which again, I think it's such an interesting story to see Jacob get closer to like Rosalie, especially Rosalie. I think that is so funny, their character development together, that relationship developing. They're the funniest two people in this book because of how often they're going back and forth. And ultimately, I wish we got to see this same development with Leia, because Seth is cool with the vampires. He likes them. He likes hanging out. Jacob is like doing it begrudgingly, but then ultimately he's like, nah, they're pretty all right. And Leah's the only one who's like, no, there are natural enemies. I'm gonna go sleep in the yard. Stephanie, I know you hate women, but could you please just do this for me? Anyway, so Jacob as a character is something I find very interesting in this book, because this is really the closest that we get to him without that skew of Bella's perspective. So he still is suffering a lot of the problems that he suffers through all of it, because ultimately, even if we're getting him from his perspective, it's still Stephenie Meyer writing him. As I've said, and I will continue to say, I don't care how many times I repeat myself, she doesn't like Jacob. So he's still suffering from that as far as his writing goes. I want to talk a little bit also about the vampires. You know, what do we think of the Twilight vampires as a whole, some of the vampires we meet in this book? Like, what are our final thoughts on all of that? So in this book, we meet every vampire, it feels like, in the entire world. And they're all interesting, to say the least. We can talk, of course, about how they still sparkle in the sun. That hasn't changed. Some of the vampires there are drinking blood, human blood, when they come to like bear witness to Renesmee as a whole. But as far as that goes, apparently they're hunting outside of Forks, so it's okay. Alright then. That's a joke I made a long time ago, is that Bella is extremely morally gray. She does not care that these other vampires are eating people. It's none of her business, frankly. As long as they don't kill her daddy or her mommy, she don't care. On that note, of course, we get an introduction to a lot of the various vampire powers that are available. So we meet, like, I think her name is Kate. She's got a shocky hurdy power just like Jane's, except hers is like electricity-ish. It's like a spark is how it's described, which is different than just like, I think, the fire-ish feeling that Jane's is. I don't know, don't quote me on that. Also meet somebody who can give other people like hallucinations almost. It's really interesting. Basically, she can make you see what she wants you to see, and it's extremely confusing for these vampires because they're so used to their perception of reality being like crystal clear. So when this lady does that to them, they're always like freaked out by it. They really, really hate it when she does that. She seems pretty cool though. Bella's powers also work on her and the hurdy lady, but not Jasper. Stephanie says something about it having to be physical rather than mental. I don't know why emotions are physical, but whatever. I would say those are pretty mental. I think it would just work better if when she gets turned into a vampire, Jasper doesn't work on her anymore, and they were like, oh, it was a placebo of when you were a human. You just thought his powers were working on you, so they were, right? Because at least that makes slightly more sense, that maybe humans are more susceptible to like their own brains tricking them, whereas vampires aren't. I think that would have been a better explanation, but whatever. I'm not the author. So we have her. We have a couple of other vampires. They do whatever. I don't really care about them. And then we have the Avatar. His name's Benjamin. He's the Avatar. So, no, I am gonna go into it. Why can this fool control the 4 elements? What was he like as a human? Because we know, previously, in previous novels, we know that this vampire power stuff occurs when you're human. It happens when you're human, like little aspects of it. And then when you get turned into a vampire, it just amplifies those powers. So, what could he do when he was human? Was he just, like, really good at telling the weather? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Especially because his power is so strong, which has also been reiterated to us over and over again, is that like the stronger you are, your human powers manifest, the stronger they're going to manifest, especially as a vampire. This is true of Bella. This would also be true of Charlie if he got turned. The idea is that he's like kind of a shield. His thoughts are slower to Edward. So the concept is that if he was turned, he would also be able to be a shield. But Bella is just especially strong as a shield because her thoughts weren't able to be read at all when she was human. The same could be said of Alice, where she was already having visions of the future. It just got more so when she was turned into a vampire. So if this fool can like accurately control the element and make a crater in the middle of the earth, casual like, what could he do as a human? And also, is this different than telekinetic powers? Like, it just doesn't work on, like, he couldn't move this book, but he could move a rock. How does that work? We're given no explanation. And it does kill me a little bit inside, I'll admit it. Also, I didn't mention it, but wolves and vampires have different amounts of chromosomes than humans do. They have, like, more DNA than us. I don't know why she included that. I would have just left the actual science part of this, swept that under the rug, Stephanie. It's fine. We can just leave it be, okay? I didn't need to know that. I didn't need to know all of that. Which does raise the question, how many chromosomes does Renesmee have? Because she has a human mother, but a vampire father. What do those extra chromosomes link to? Because if you didn't know, you get half chromosomes, and then you get full chromosomes. So is she more Edward than she is Bella because she has more of Edward's DNA? Am I making any sense? Anyways, all that's to say that the vampire lore is still as insane as it always has been, and still somehow really lame at the same time. As far as, like, vampires go, like, if you compare them to a lot of other vampires, like, in a lot of ways, there are some very horror adjacent things that I think she's added in, like, on accident. Like, they were accidentally added in, right? Like, the fact that they don't sleep, which isn't that weird at first until Bella describes this as, like, the first and last day of forever. Suddenly it's horrifying that this day is gonna last forever. That's terrifying, right? Or, like, apparently this is something I learned later on. Their bodies are, like, actually hard, like porcelain. Like, they're like, kind of, not really. They're like porcelain. They're like glass. So that's what they sound like when they touch each other. Like, physically, that's what it sounds like. Horrifying, really weird, don't like that. So there's a lot of aspects of the vampires that kind of have this, like, weird twinge to it, but a lot of it feels like almost accidental, like she was trying to imagine a perfect person, and because of that, it ends up in this uncanny valley of stuff, rather than the vampires purposely being kind of scary. Like, a lot of it does feel accidental. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the vampires in a second, but right now, let's go ahead and talk about all of the gender stuff that is in this book.
It is so exhausting to read. We're getting on to the exhausting parts of this book.
We're going to be talking about racism too in just like a minute. Give me a second. So, Stephanie hates women. I wasn't like, there were aspects of this, of internalized misogyny throughout her writing, sure, but there never was a moment where I was like, oh, she, like, hates women. Like, that never really came up for me. Until we get all of this weird gender awfulness in this book. So, for instance, women who are infertile are just miserable, poor little things who should be put out of their misery, practically. It's that bad. I'm being 100% for real with you, right? Like, or like they're, like, wrong. Something's wrong with them. They're unnatural. I'm like, that is such a horrible thing to say, just because somebody's infertile, but specifically it's only women. If men are infertile, it's, like, not that big of a deal. They'll be fine. But women who are infertile, it's the worst thing that could possibly happen to them, which is something that I hate. It's a common trope. It's just dumb and stupid and really irritating. And this goes into more aspects of this. Werewolves are not typically women. They're only men. Leia is, like, an outlier and, like, a statistical anomaly. It's only men. Only men get to be werewolves. Only men, right? Okay. Only men are allowed to be fertile as vampires. Only men are allowed to be fertile, not women. Women are not allowed to be fertile as vampires. Only men. And then only the male hybrids are venomous. Only the men. The women are not venomous. Only the men. Why does this keep appearing? There are differences in all animals between the different sexes. I shouldn't say all animals. Some, there's not really that big of a difference between female and male. They're, like, practically identical. But as humans, you know, there's a difference. Subtly stuff. What's that called? A species dysmorphia? No, I don't know. It's called something. There's a scientific word for this. Where basically, like, especially, like, in dogs, right? The females are usually, like, a little bit smaller. And this is common in different animals all over the place. It is shocking how often the males are given the better end of the stick, though, in Twilight. Like, this is a stupid amount of that. Like, it does occur in science, but not as much as, like, it is here. Like, there are very slight differences in the overall aspects of it. And even in humans, like, I know it's a hot political debate, but ultimately, there aren't as many differences between a female and a male body as people will tell you. But ultimately, the difference between a female and a male body, most of them are, like, cosmetic, minus the one aspect, which is that some females can carry a baby. That's about it, and that's not true of all females. So the differences between a male and female body are, again, mostly cosmetic. Females are usually smaller, not always. Sometimes there's ladies who are 6'4" and they're just chilling. As far as the actual biological differences between us, it's not like men have an extra finger, you know? It's not like they have an extra hand. Like, ultimately, as far as like species only having one aspect towards one of the sexes, that's extremely rare, especially with having like only one half of the species being venomous. That is like, I don't think there's a species on Earth like this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but even if there is, it's very, very rare. So I don't know why this kept coming up like consistently and constantly. I think the gender thing is weird and gross, and I don't know why it's incorporated. All that's to say, it is interesting to me that only women get the short end of the biological stick in like all three species that Stephanie has, you know, named. Women are the ones who get the short end of the stick biologically. They're biologically inferior. Like, that's bad. Let's talk about the racism. I already briefly talked about the fact that there is the first black character in the Twilight series, as far as I can remember. I said that in the first book, like, the fact that I noticed that there's no black people is, like, bad world building, right? The fact that I noticed that there was only one black person is also bad world building. I have to wonder if he was included because of all the complaints she was getting. I don't know. Especially because we have people from Egypt, which is a part of Africa, obviously, but these people are not described as having very dark skin. As mentioned in another video, maybe this one, according to Stephanie, the venom gets rid of all of the melanin, which is racist. So none of the vampires have dark skin. They have olive tinted pallors, which basically means they're my color, but an olive undertone rather than my neutral undertone that I have, I think. I also briefly mentioned Bella continuously calls these people wild women and uncivilized and other very, very racist terms. Maybe that's why Bella didn't ask Jasper about the whole civil war thing. Maybe she's just racist. I have said before that it's not undertones in this book that's racist. It's overtones. I was talking about New Moon. I've said that in Eclipse when I was talking about Eclipse. And that was mainly to do with how the native people are treated in the Twilight books. This is insane. This is insane. This isn't undertones or overtones. It's a tone. It's just the tone of the book. We're past the over and under parts, babe. I've said before, it's not subtext, it's just the text. This is the text times 12. This is Stephanie Meyer just tweeting that Bella's racist. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. I don't even know what to say about it because, oh my god, it kept pulling me out of the book. Like, you can't go back to reading it. You need to, like, take a second and be like, was this written in the 1950s? What is going on? Especially with all the weird gender things. Like, it's so bizarre and odd, and I really hate it, and I want to make it very clear that this book is like really, really racist. Now, not like a little, like really, really racist. Like, there's the story about the hybrid boy's mom. She is described as being the prettiest girl in the village and also the palest. Why is that a common theme in your writing, Stephanie? Like, it's very weird and odd, and Miss Meyer, could we, like, read a book, maybe? I think that we need to do that together, is read a book. Pull up that anti-racist reading. You gotta get to it, okay? Because this is embarrassing. I think I want to end this video talking about all of the Twilights, which I have been kind of mentioning all of them together, all of the Twilight series all together, as I'm discussing all of it. I think I just said the same words like 5 times in a row right then. Oh well. Basically, I want to end this video by asking the biggest question that I think people have after reading the Twilight saga, which is, of course, why Twilight? Why Twilight? Why Twilight? Why a Twilight? You follow? This book blew up. And from what I've described so far, if we pretended that I never said the word Twilight, and then I revealed that it was Twilight I was talking about, what about this series caused people to lose their minds about it? Everyone had an opinion about the Twilight series. Whether it was a good opinion or a bad opinion, they had an opinion. Everybody had a strong opinion about this too. There wasn't anybody out there being like, oh, it was fine. It was a mid-tier book, whatever. Everybody had a strong opinion about Twilight, okay? About this fucking series right here. Everybody and their mom had an opinion. Why? I have some theories. We can look at the history of everything, but I don't really feel like doing that. I'm just going off of my vague memory of things that were going on when I was a child. So excuse me if I forget any big button issues, but we had Harry Potter. Harry Potter was another phenomenon of a terrible book where everybody was like, oh my god, magic is really cool. So it was like Harry Potter, the Lord of the Rings had their little movies right around this time too. There was like a big boom in the concept of fantasy and urbanness combining to become urban fantasy, right? Fantasy romance was a genre untouched by the film industry at the time. We had lots of romantic comedies. They were coming out all the time. Rom-coms were everywhere, okay? No fantasy rom-com. No fantasy romantic movies. We didn't have that at the time. Emo. Very big at the time. Very big emo scene, okay? Gerard Way, huge. Everybody liked Gerard Way at the time. I still like Gerard Way. He's still a big thing. Anyways, everybody thought he was a vampire too. And they thought that was really cool, that he could have been a vampire. Stephenie Meyer has a dream. She writes her dream, okay? She writes it. She publishes it. This is peak time. All these kids who read Harry Potter are finally old enough to read it like an actual romance novel that has some edge to it, okay? So we got Twilight. We get Twilight from that, right? But they're ready for more fantasy. And they're still not quite ready to grow up, so it has to be like little kid fantasy, but also like teenage fantasy, right? So this is where this comes in. This is like strictly teen YA, perfect example of teen YA, right? So we need that little bit of fantasy. We want that little bit of romance because they're finally grown up enough to like really want to explore the concept of romance, right? So we got those two things going, right? It's a little edgy. It's a little edgy. It's about vampires. Those are scary. It's a little edgy, right? We also have The Hunger Games also coming out around this time, okay? It doesn't have anything to do with it, but it catches up in this phenomenon. We also have the fact that vampires were like, no. They're like, no. Nobody's doing vampires right now. Nobody's doing vampires. My Chemical Romance is doing vampires, but nobody's really doing vampires, you know? Until Miss Meyer did. All this is coming together to make the perfect, like, rocket fuel for Twilight, okay? But then we have to really understand Twilight itself. What does Twilight have that makes it really, really take off compared to something like The Vampire Diaries, which was published before Twilight? Why was it Breaking Dawn? Why was it Twilight and not The Vampire Diaries, right? And this is where we get in to the vampire lore of Twilight. There's a vacuum going. We'll give it a second. Okay, it's gone kind of. The Twilight vampires are a little lame. Me and you, we know this, right? But not only are they a little lame, they're safe. These guys don't eat people. They eat animals, like you and I. We eat animals. So it's not that weird. And they don't have sharp, scary teeth. God, no! They have normal teeth. Nice and normal, straight white teeth. And they don't burn in the sunlight. God, that would be terrifying and horrifying. They sparkle. All of this stuff, like I said, there are parts of the Twilight vampires that are horrifying, that are good world building, and that are like horror movie level, right? But a lot of it, especially that first introduction of them, is like safe and soft and not that scary. It's not that scary. So if you had just finished reading Harry Potter as a child, and you're finally ready to read like a teenage book, and you are interested in romance, but also, let's be honest here, horror's scary. It's a little scary. You have an edge to you, but maybe horror movies are just a little bit too much. Twilight. You have to understand that horror movies were also really big right now, but also not everybody could watch these horror movies because they were scary, and horror movies really only appeal to a certain genre of people. So they're in the pot. They're in the pot, and people are noticing the horror movies in the pot, but they don't like horror movies because they're scary. Bam! Twilight. Slightly horror, not though. Gives you that edge. It's that edge of horror that makes you feel cool and edgy and emo, but not as scary. All of this is combining to make a perfect mainstream book that will fit into the stream that's been made, right? All of these different all of these different aspects, all right, these are all little rivers, okay, connecting to the big mainstream that Twilight's gonna be a little boat on and fall through, okay? It didn't need to have good writing. It had everything else. Everything just worked out perfectly for it. And so it doesn't need to be an amazing book. It can be mid-tier. It just can't be a bad book. That's all. And it wasn't a bad book. It was pretty okay. And that's what caused this to be talked about everywhere. Everywhere. And because it was on that mainstream, and because girls liked it, that meant that not only could girls be like, I love this book, this is my favorite book, I'm going to talk about it all the time, I'm going to pretend that Edward Cullen bit me in the middle of the night because we're in love. Not only could girls do that, but also weird-ass grown-ass men could make fun of them because they hate women and they think it's funny to make fun of little kids because they don't have a life. Which meant once they started doing it, it was way normalized to make fun of Twilight, which meant that you either had people who loved Twilight or people who made fun of everything girls did. And that's why it blew up. You have to remember that was also part of the 2000s culture, was hating women. It's still part of the mainstream culture right now, but big part of the culture there. So even though this is a book made for women, by women, that follows a lot of interests that, are statistically filled with women, because the mainstream at the time was also hating women, this book got to float down that stream. It hit all of them. You think you were being counterculture by hating Twilight, you fool, you fucking imbecile. You weren't. You were the mainstream. You were mainstream. The counterculture opinion to have about Twilight is that it is a book that people liked. I have the counterculture opinion. You guys are a bunch of sheeple. Me, I'm a leader. I'm a revolutionary. I need to stop. That was mostly a joke by the end of it, but it's important to note that those were big aspects of the culture at the time, was that women and women's stuff was weird and wrong, and we weren't like other girls. And so when Twilight came out and a lot of women liked it, it still followed that mainstream aspect of being something that could be easily made fun of, even if it wasn't necessarily bad. And so all of that combined to create the perfect thing to become so popular that it was stupid. And then it spawned 8 billion other book-alikes like it. And Stephanie Meyer made a lot of money. The good news is, of course, that it gave us Robert Pattinson as Batman. And I really like that Batman movie, and I'm excited for the next one. I think that's going to conclude my video series. My video essay, and my video series. And my video essay series. And my video series essays about Twilight. And the Twilight saga, and Breaking Dawn. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Instagram. I'm probably going to be posting the stories of me editing this and how long it's going to take me, because it's going to take me forever, because of course it is. I post on TikTok pretty often. I'm pretty popular there, not to brag. I'm on anywhere as Kaylee J, pretty much. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. You can press buttons on YouTube to let me know that you did. You can subscribe if you want to see more from me. It's so funny, I was watching the last video, and I said I was 21. I am now 22 years old. It's been a year. I'm so sorry. My phone broke. I don't want to talk about it, so I got this new one, and I don't want to talk about that. I recently got a job, which has been exhausting for me, and I'm doing school at the same time, which means I'm more motivated than ever to become a famous YouTuber, so that I can quit both of those and hopefully just glide off of the revenue from this. I wouldn't. Mom, I promise. No, I'm gonna stay in school. I promise, Mom. God. Dad, no, I promise. That was just a joke. I was also thinking about doing more lifestyle stuff, because I'm not sure if you've noticed, but my skin is looking awful clear right now. I'm not wearing any makeup, so that's bad. But like, come on. You want to know how I did that? I'll tell you how. You gotta ask for it is all. Feel free to comment down below any of your thoughts on this book, on the entire Twilight series. I want to hear it, I'm interested to see what other people have to say, especially because it's been a minute since not only this book came out, but from the Twilight Renaissance when everybody was talking about it. Now that we've moved past both of those phenomenons, what do you guys really think of the book? Like, what do you think? Like, tell me about it. I want to know. Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. Bye. The eye icon should be on this side of the screen. I'm nearly positive about this. It's going to be on this side. I'm going to be putting stuff up throughout the video, like other videos and stuff, and it's going to be on this side of the screen, because I know my lefts from my rights. So it's definitely going to be on this side of the screen. 100%.